Should be live. All right, let's get us started. All right, we're just getting TikTok booted up. Should be live. All right, let's get us audio started. Sounds clear. Happy Memorial Day. Is that what today is? I don't keep track of these things very well. Howdy, howdy. Hope everybody's having a great day. Just so everybody knows, I think when I do that, I think I'm quoting Shrek. I think I'm doing a Shrek reference. I think. TikTok's updating, so we might not get a guest for a bit unless we get one on YouTube, because you know TikTok has to do its thing. But in the meantime, I'm happy to talk to chat. Hate TikTok updates. We should put lip stuff on. What's wrong, Bugaboo? All right. Howdy, howdy. Yeah, the gang's all here. Autocorrect, I hate you. Got R done. Okay, so we should be all set. I think TikTok just finished its update, which is good for us. And it should be starting any minute now. I guess I probably shouldn't have started the TikTok live or the YouTube live without knowing that the TikTok live would be live. But on the other hand, in principle, this is what it will be like if and when Trump bans TikTok. Oh, I'm a little bit bright. Let me change my lighting a little bit. We're just getting started, y'all, for y'all who just got here. I had some good Indian food for dinner. Also, moving is expensive and sucks. So I would recommend don't do it. If you can avoid it, don't do it. Obviously, you can't avoid it, but if you can. Testing. Okay, audio's working on TikTok, it looks like. Yeah, moving transatlantic, so much worse. So much worse than you ever could imagine. All right, am I just dumb? Like, should I? Okay, never mind, it's starting. All right, and I think that we should be live on TikTok in just about. You look exactly how people imagine atheists look. So like with a sharp jawline and glasses? Is that the thing? Because I'm pretty sure I've looked this way for like years. So, all right, we're live on TikTok. It's either God or evolution, right? Well, evolution gets destroyed by the lifespan of basic compounds needed to create a cell. Well, I don't know if that's true, but if you think that that's true, then feel free to join the guest box and we can have a conversation about it. Look, I just have the genetics for this jawline. Like, nothing, no mewing happened here. It's just good genetics. I don't know what to tell you. I think you look like a doppelganger of mine, of a friend of mine growing up. It's always funny when that happens, right? Oh, we have a guest already. Shall we talk to Edward's Dilemma? Edward's Dilemma, how's it going?
Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. What do you believe?
I believe in lunch is over, but a lot of things. Not in God, though. I just had a question. I saw you debating yesterday on Ian's channel.
Yeah, what's up?
So a guy started to question radiometric decay.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of thought that you can't hold that position to question, uniformity of decay and fine-tuning at the same time. Don't you think one would foreclose the other?
Yeah, generally, they don't think that far in advance.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just want to hear that from a physicist. That was just kind of like a thing I always thought about when I heard that argument.
Yep. No, it's a very good point. And so that's what, like, in fact, I've brought that up in the past when somebody has tried to make both arguments. But it doesn't really work when they try to make both arguments. But if they make one or if they make the other, then, it's fine.
All right. Thank you, man.
Of course. Take care. All right. Let's see if we can get a opposition up. We currently people are just trickling in on TikTok. So give it some time and we should get some more people in here. Most well-evidenced theory in all of science is destroyed by science? What a ding-dong. I don't know what that means. From the north. How's it going?
Yo, man, you good?
Yeah, I'm good. What do you believe in?
I'm a Christian.
Oh, okay. So what would you say is like the most compelling reason you could give me so that I become a Christian?
Well, the Christian worldview, from my perspective, is the only one that makes sense because it justifies and redeems all the suffering in creation.
Can you elaborate on that a bit? Oh, thanks for the galaxy, Jabroni. Go ahead.
So my point is, the source of all misery is God's love. Because if you love creatures, you give them free will. And if you give them free will, there's the possibility of rebellion. And rebellion is what brings misery.
Sorry, so I'm a little confused here, right? Because, like, surely, would you say that, I don't know, termites have free will?
No, but we're talking about human beings like you and me.
Oh, you mentioned creatures. I mean, creatures certainly suffer, right? Even non-human creatures.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But so then where's the free will that allows for non-human creatures to suffer?
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, for example, take for example like a lion, getting trapped in a getting crushed in an earthquake, right?
Yeah.
And its leg gets trapped, and it gets trapped so it can't escape, and then while it's trapped there, it just gets devoured by termites or something like that. Where's the free will involved in that?
Well, I wouldn't. Well, it didn't really have free will because there were variables out of his control.
Right, but it's a lion, and the lion surely suffered. So what's the Christian explanation for that?
Yeah, that's what I was getting to. I was saying, like, the source of all misery is rebellion of like creatures. For example,
But how did the lion rebel?
No, but obviously because of Adam's sin, that's why the lion is now suffering, because the earth was cursed.
But what if this happened? What if this happened before Adam even existed?
It couldn't, because there was harmony on the earth.
What? So, do you think that there were animals that existed before Adam and Eve?
No, I'm saying before Adam and Eve sinned, there was harmony on the earth. So without the sin,
so just to be clear,
no misery on the earth.
When would you say that Adam and Eve sinned? Like, how long ago?
6,000. I don't know, like 6,000 years ago, something like that.
Okay, so do you think that animals existed more than 6,000 years ago?
I'm not an expert on that. I can't say.
So, like, do you think dinosaurs existed?
Well, the Bible don't really mention them, so I don't know.
But, like, we have dinosaur bones, right?
Yeah, but that's like... That could be anything, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, and the thing is, I'm trusting
what could it
scientific
be?
sources. Like, I don't know, because the Bible talks about how... Okay, not the Bible, but certain biblical texts talk about how there was, like, experimenting with DNA in the days of
the Bible
old.
mentions DNA?
No, not the Bible, but like Enoch.
Enoch mentions DNA?
No, like they were experimenting on like creatures on Earth.
Who?
You know, altering DNA and all them things. Like the
where
fallen
in
ones.
Enoch does it say this? This is crazy. I'd
I
love to hear
I
this.
don't remember, innit? I don't remember. I read it somewhere.
I don't think Enoch mentions anything about experiments or DNA.
Okay, wait. But let me get to my main point that I was trying to make.
Okay.
About the misery in existence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Sure.
Alright, so my point was, if the source of all misery is free will, then that, like, God creating us cannot be justified unless there's a way of reversing all of the suffering and restoring everything to the way it once was.
But I'm not convinced that free will is the cause of all suffering, because we have bones from 70 million years ago that had bone cancer. And that was way before humans.
Okay, wait. We can come back to that, but let me just land my point first.
Okay, what's your point?
I don't have the knowledge to go against you on that. Alright, so my point is the fact that the Bible says that the lamb was slain before the foundations of the earth, right? Meaning that before the earth was created or the heavens was created, the lamb was already slain, right? Meaning that God can't create all of us creatures without paying a price because of all the suffering that was inevitable. This literally means that...
That's a little bit puzzling, right? You're saying that God cannot create us without paying a price?
Yeah, because there has to be a means of redemption and restoration.
Sounds like he's not all powerful then.
No, because but that's what the Christian narrative is. He's all powerful, but
then
the
why
price
does he need to pay a price in order to do something? It seems like he's missing a power then.
No, because
the power
of
to
legal
create
rights.
without paying a price.
No, because look at it this way. He saw the future and all the misery that could happen, and he saw that human beings would have to be redeemed and creation would have to be redeemed.
Could he not have created a world without the misery?
As long as there's free will, you can't have a world without misery because people would have the choice to rebel.
Could he have created a world with a different amount of misery?
Well, you mean like less of misery is misery though? You can't say lesser or
well, I mean,
misery
surely we can agree that there are ways to talk about more or less misery. When I stub my toe, that's less misery than like if I was being tortured for 18 hours, right?
Okay, yeah.
So could he have created a world with a different amount of misery, either more or less?
Not if the source of misery was sin.
So he could not have created a world with a different amount of misery, is what you're telling me.
No, but you can't say that because the source of all misery
no, it's a question.
is sin.
So could he have created a world with more misery or with less misery? Or could he have only created a world with exactly this much misery?
It's unknowable unless you're God himself.
Well, no. So would God know whether he could create a world with more or less misery?
Yeah, he would know.
Okay, so he would know. So either he would know that he could have created a world with more or less misery, in which case, presumably, he could have created one with less misery. So that's kind of weird that he didn't. Or he could have created one with more misery, in which case, what is the upshot of the misery that we currently have? Or alternatively, he couldn't have created a world with more or less misery, in which case it seems like he doesn't have all the powers.
No, but you're missing my point, bro. You're missing my point.
But
saying,
I mean, the point is that it seems kind of strange that God created a world with misery to begin with, and especially with this exact amount of misery. Very, very bizarre.
No, but I'm saying misery is inevitable, meaning
perhaps was this amount of misery inevitable?
But I don't know. I can't answer.
But God would know, right?
Yeah, God would know, but you can't ask me that. I don't know.
Right, but the fact that there is an answer means that either A, this amount of misery, God could not have created a universe with less misery in it, in which case it seems like he's just not all powerful. Or
Yeah, but
he
then
could have created a world with less misery in it, in which case it seems like he just created a worse world for no reason.
no. But you still have to look at what the source of misery is, which is
I
rebellion.
understand that you're saying the source of misery is free will, but free will doesn't account for all of the misery, right? Earthquakes happen, for example, right? Whether or not God creates a world that has earthquakes on it has nothing to do with, whether or not a human decides to eat an apple or some human decides to like go on a serial rampage. Like that's unrelated, right? So in principle, God could have just made a world with no earthquakes. He didn't need to do that. So it just seems kind of strange that he would make that
but
world.
originally it did. Originally, everything was made good.
So are you telling me that God had no choice to make the world have earthquakes?
No, but God, all the misery did not come from God. It came from rebellion.
Just to be clear, just so I'm understanding you properly, are you saying that God had no role so Adam and Eve rebelled, right? Eve ate the apple, Adam ate the apple. That's the rebellion you're talking about, right?
Now I'm talking about the original rebellion in heaven.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about Satan. Okay, sure.
Yeah,
so,
I'm talking
so
about
you're
both
saying
rebellion.
So you're saying that Satan Satan rebels against God, and then you're saying that Satan caused earthquakes on Earth. That's Satan's fault.
Yeah, because bro, you're missing the Christian narrative. Because I'm sure you never asked this question.
But
you never asked this question. But,
could God
my bad.
So did God have to allow him to create earthquakes?
Well, Satan doesn't create earthquakes. It's because we're living in a time where the earth has been cursed. Because God said, "Curses the ground because of you."
I'm just not following, right? Are you saying that before? So God created the earth. Did Satan's rebellion take place after God created the earth or before God created the earth?
That one I don't really know.
Well, let's just say God created the earth
before.
before. Okay, so God created the earth before Satan rebelled, right? That's what you're saying?
No, I'm saying like, no, you're not letting me land my point, bro. Like, my main point is the fact that the blood of the lamb was slain before creation means that there was a way of restoration for all the misery before the misery took place. Meaning that before there was misery in the world, before Lucifer even rebelled, God already made a plan of restoration. Meaning, through foresight, he took responsibility for all the wrongs that could have happened. That's responsibility.
That's
right
great.
there.
I'm just asking why there are wrongs that happened at all, especially certain kinds of wrongs.
Or you mean like the first rebellion?
No, I mean like earthquakes.
Earthquakes?
Yeah.
Well, that one, I'll say is because the devil's been given dominion over this world. And the ground was cursed. So
the devil produced the tectonic plates, is what you're telling me.
Okay, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, let's say there's natural disasters, like all them things there. I feel like, because in the Bible it says that something has to be agreed in the spirit before it manifests in the physical. So I'll say a lot of the misery in the world right now is just the devil doing it, but we just can't see it.
Well, so like earthquakes, we know what causes earthquakes. It's tectonic plates, right? You have like the plates and then they bump up next to each other and that releases a lot of energy and it causes an earthquake, right? That's what an earthquake is. So are you saying that prior to, or are you saying that it was Satan that put the tectonic plates there?
No, I'm saying like originally the world was perfect, but then after the world got cursed,
that's the question, right? Originally, did the world have tectonic plates?
Yeah, but not in a way that it would have caused earthquakes, because
earthquakes are inevitable in any system with tectonic plates.
No, not if
that's what tectonic plates do.
By God. No, but look at it this way. Even if they were earthquakes, if God was on the earth, no one would experience any misery originally in the original world. In the beginning, it was not so.
So suppose for a moment that there were earthquakes at the very beginning, and then Satan rebelled. So what did Satan do that caused earthquakes to become bad?
He made mankind vulnerable to pain and death.
So prior to Satan's fall, to Satan's rebellion, rather, you're saying that an earthquake could happen, and it could crush you, but you wouldn't feel anything?
No, Adam before the fall was something that you would not believe. Like an earthquake would not affect him because
Well,
God's
but
glory was
so
upon
like,
him.
was Adam a physical being? Like, did Adam
Yeah,
exist on
but
Earth? So then,
yeah,
and
but
an earthquake could happen, right? So an earthquake could like
we
open
don't
up.
know that. We don't know that.
Well,
We don't
that's
know
the
that
question, right?
because God is the God of harmony. If there's earthquakes taking place while God is on the earth, it will contradict the harmony that He brings.
So then you're
So to
telling
say
me
that,
that Satan caused earthquakes.
yeah, I'm saying that the earthquakes are happening because the ground has been cursed. Where there was
The
once harmony, now there's
earthquakes are
disharmony.
happening because the ground has been. Who cursed the ground?
God Himself.
Why would God curse the ground though? He didn't need to do that.
He has a consequence of what Adam and Eve did.
Why would God choose earthquakes to be the consequence rather than just
No, the
say, I don't
earthquake
know,
is not.
smiting Adam and Eve?
Well, the thing is, you can't smite Adam and Eve because then
Sure, he could. He could just smite them and start over.
yeah, but then Lucifer, the accusations would be whoever doesn't please God, he just discards of them, and then he'll
Yeah,
be a villain.
I mean, yeah, he does do that. That's what the whole Noah's
No,
flood
that's
thing
not
was.
true.
What about Noah's flood?
You know, that was because there was so much wickedness in the world, and because
Yeah, so
no,
he smote them all.
wait, and the blame was on Noah because Noah could have made supplication to try to save the whole earth, but
Wait,
he chose
Noah
to
wasn't.
only
Hold
save
on, Noah.
himself.
Noah's flood isn't. The flood isn't Noah's fault. What?
No. Partly it is because he
No, it's
never made
not.
supplication.
What? Are you crazy?
No, listen to what I'm
Noah,
saying. Listen to what I'm saying.
how none of it's Noah's fault.
Okay, wait, I'm not saying it's his fault, but look at it this way. When God's wrath was going to destroy Israel, Moses stood in the way and diverted the wrath, right? But when the flood was coming to the earth, Noah did not make supplication to try to save the people on the earth. Noah had the power and the position to do so, but he chose not to. He didn't even
How
cross
does
his
any of
mind.
that make Noah's fault at all?
I'm not saying
Any
it's
of this
Noah's
Noah's
fault, but
fault.
I'm saying Noah.
So then
could
why
have
bring it up if
prevented
it's not his fault?
I say no. Let's just keep it moving. My bad, bro.
So, I mean, look, so if you're a parent and your child does something wrong, you have a choice of how to punish them, of how to, produce consequences. If let's say that your kid steals a candy bar, right, from the corner store, you could you could ground your kid for a week, right? Maybe that's a reasonable punishment or a reasonable consequence. You could take away your kid's phone. Maybe you could do both. You could spank your kid. I wouldn't advise that. Child abuse isn't cool. You could call the cops and report your kid to the police. You could torture your kid. Wouldn't advise that, but in principle you could, right? So my point is whenever your offspring or whenever someone you're responsible for does something bad and you want to enact some sort of consequence or some sort of punishment, you have choices. And God's the same way, right? So God has choices amongst the possible consequences that he could enact. The question is, why was making earthquakes possible one of those choices that he made?
Because the earth was no longer under God's complete authority anymore.
Sorry, you're contradicting yourself now.
Earlier,
you said that the fact that Earth... Earlier, you said that it was God that cursed the Earth. And that was your response to me asking why there are earthquakes. So earlier, you made the claim that earthquakes are the result of God cursing the Earth. So it is God's decision to cause earthquakes as a consequence of the fall of Adam and Eve. So you can't back out on this now.
No, but you're not looking at what I'm saying though. I'm saying like God cursed the earth, but it was only because Adam and Eve gave over their generation and their dominion over the earth to the devil through the spiritual transaction of eating the fruit.
That's fine. God cursed the earth as a consequence, right?
Yeah.
So why did he choose that as a consequence, enabling, say, earthquakes, as opposed to just having, sometimes the ground gets a little shaky, but earthquakes don't actually happen? Why did he choose earthquakes as one possible consequence?
Because, you know what, all I can do is speculate, innit? Because I feel like earthquakes is just one of the ways in which death can take a human being.
Right,
so
but it's a cause of it's a source of misery, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're telling me that God not only, it's not free will that is a source of misery. It's God's choice that is a source of misery. It's not Adam's choice. It's God's choice.
No, because God didn't have a choice, because if he's just,
Oh, God didn't
he has to.
God didn't have a choice. He couldn't have chosen to
no.
not make earthquakes
No,
happen.
I'm saying he has a choice, but if you are the judge of all things, you have to be perfectly fair, meaning you have to give unto them according to their works exactly what they deserve.
So to be clear, eating an apple means that all of your future generations will risk. It is perfectly fair to say that all future generations now have this risk of suffering, of literally being swallowed by the earth. That's fair in your eyes?
Because they gave over dominion to the evil one.
Well, no, but so to be clear, God had a choice, and he chose to make that part of the consequences. He didn't have to. He could have made it he could have made a different consequence, perhaps a less misery-inducing consequence, but he didn't. What that means is that at least, he could have made it so that, whenever the tectonic plates move around, they buzz and it's a little bit uncomfortable under your feet rather than potentially swallowing you. That would be one way to have a less severe consequence. The analogy with the parent for the child who stole a candy bar, the analogy would be grounding them rather than reporting them to the cops, right? Like, the consequence doesn't need to be earthquakes that literally crush people alive. It could be little ground vibrations that make your feet hurt a bit, right?
Wait, but you can't say that though, because you and I are humans.
I can absolutely say he could have done something different.
So then, but by saying that, you're saying, oh, you know better than God, and then that's
I'm not
pride.
saying I know better than God. What I'm saying is that this contradicts the claim that you made that all suffering is the result of human free will. It's not in this case.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
You that's how you entered the conversation.
I said suffering started from rebellion, and the first rebellion was in heaven.
So to be clear, you're comfortable saying that God is the source of this kind of misery,
as long as he allows people to freely choose.
No, this kind of misery, earthquakes, has nothing to do with human choice.
Yes, it does, because Adam and Eve chose to eat the apple.
And he chose what to make the consequences as.
Yeah.
That's the important point.
So you're completely negating the fact that Adam and Eve chose to betray God, but you're highlighting God when he has to be the judge, even though it's written in the Bible that mercy rejoices against judgment. And God doesn't want to judge anyone, but by necessity, he has to do what is perfectly fair. But when God does something perfectly fair...
Just to be clear, the child, in the analogy with the child and the parent, right? The child had the choice to steal the candy bar, right? And then we can agree that in order for justice to be served, some kind of consequence must be exacted. I agree. There must be some kind of justice. If you want, or rather, maybe there must not, there doesn't have to be, but, if you want justice to be a thing, then there should be some sort of consequence. What that consequence is, that's a choice by the parent. Just like how the consequence that God chose or the consequence that God enacted for Adam and Eve's betrayal or, rebellion, that consequence is God's choice. So if the parent decides, the analogy here would be the parent deciding to torture their child rather than just grounding them.
Also, now you're basically
that would be
saying
akin. That would be akin to God deciding to make the consequence earthquakes rather than just painful ground shakes, right?
Okay, I see where you're coming from, but these are just what ifs, and they're not really going to add any.
Well, it does show that God is the source of at least one kind of misery.
Okay, yeah, but the main point
How
here
is he all loving then?
Okay, wait, because before everyone was created, there was a way of redemption and restoration.
That's irrelevant to the misery that he causes.
No, it's not. Because it means that no matter what you do, he already agreed to suffer for his... That means the price of all of creation was the blood of the creator.
That's kind of irrelevant, though. The trouble with suffering is not what happens after you die. The trouble with suffering is the experience of the suffering.
Okay, wait. But then look at it this way, right? Why don't you ask this question, right? If the devil chose to repent, what are the consequences of that?
I have no idea. I don't know what your theology dictates.
Okay, now look at it this way, right? According to the Bible, you go to hell because the Satan has a legal claim over you. That's why, like, Jesus
A legal
called...
claim? What? God's bound by the law?
No, he's not bound by it, but he can't be unjust.
Wait. So then what's the deal with the legal claim? By the way, is God perfectly merciful?
Yeah.
Okay, and God is perfectly just?
Yeah.
Would you say that a judge that is perfectly merciful would grant mercy to all of the criminals? Would not exact consequences on them?
Yeah.
Okay, and would you say that a judge that is perfectly just would always exact consequences exactly as they're deserved?
Yeah, you can do both.
So then would you say that it is impossible to be both perfectly merciful and perfectly just, because those two things produce contradictory outcomes?
Well, that's what I'm trying to explain to you. Wait, let me learn. Now look at it this way.
Sure,
right?
go ahead.
If the devil...
You did just contradict yourself, by the way, though.
Okay, wait. Let me explain though. Right, the reason why people go to hell is not because of their sins. It's because your sins give the devil a legal claim over you. That's why Jesus said you are of your father, the devil. You know what I'm saying? He literally said that that's your father. And the Bible also says the glory of children are their fathers. Meaning, if your father is the devil, then his glory is also your glory. Meaning, wherever he goes, you're going as well, because he's going to say, that's my son. He's coming with me. But then here's the thing. If the devil chose to repent for his sins, and he no longer had a claim over all of the people in hell, all the generations of Adam and Eve, everyone in hell is free to go. Meaning that the only reason that most of humanity is going to hell is because the devil is choosing not to let them go, because he does not want to repent. He would rather burn than seek mercy, and he's willing to drag all of humanity with him, even though mercy is not denied to anyone. Because Jesus Christ said...
Just to be... I'm a little confused as to, like, where this is going. Like, what happens after you die? We could talk about that. But my question was about what happens while you're alive. Right? Because as far as I'm concerned, the world that we live in is filled with misery. Like, there are some good things. Absolutely, I agree that there are some good and beautiful and harmonious things in the world. There's also, like, a lot of misery, right? We can agree on that, right?
Yeah, but that's the whole point of what I was saying.
So my question is, why is God causing more misery than necessary on this earth?
Wait, so your first example was earthquakes, right?
Yeah. Like, why did God choose earthquake? Why did God choose earthquakes to be a thing that can happen on this earth?
I told you that's unknowable unless you know the heart of God.
But the point is the fact that he chose it means that, and he didn't need to, means that he just chose to produce more misery than was necessary. Which
you don't know.
Seems like
you don't know whether it was a necessity or not. You don't know that because you can't see.
So to be clear, there's a double, as my good pal Ian likes to say, this is a double bind, because either A, it was not necessary for these earthquakes to happen, in which case God just chose to make a world where earthquakes are a part of it, which is evil. Or it is necessary for earthquakes to happen, which means that God doesn't have the power to produce a world without earthquakes.
Okay, wait, but then here's one thing you're forgetting though. After Christ died, did he not say that he gave them power over serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy? Meaning earthquakes can easily be negated.
I don't know what you're talking about. Repeat that, please.
I'm saying Jesus said that he's given them power over serpents and scorpions.
Giving who?
Like Christians, whoever's gonna follow him.
So Christians have powers over serpents and scorpions?
Yeah, and over all the power of the enemy. Meaning that if earthquakes...
You don't believe that, right?
Yeah, I do.
Because Christians get, like, stung and bitten by serpents and scorpions.
I'm not talking about actual, like, snakes, and we're talking about spiritual entity. You're trying to troll me, innit?
No, I thought that you were literally talking about the actual animals. If you're not talking about the animals, I have no idea what you mean. What is a spiritual scorpion?
Talking about, like, demons, principalities, and powers and all that.
Wait, so that's what a spiritual scorpion is?
Yeah, like spiritual. When he was talking about serpents and scorpions, he's talking about like the kingdom of the enemy. Spiritual entities.
Okay, so continue then.
And I'm saying, like, if earthquakes have been caused by the curse, we now have dominion and power to stop the misery in the world, because he's given us power over everything that the enemy can do.
Wait a minute.
Meaning that
the enemy didn't cause the earthquakes. That was God.
No, but it was because of the curse, and the curse is what gave him.
It was the curse that God invoked. right? It was the curse
but
that
now,
God chose to put in place. So it was the enemy didn't cause earthquakes.
yeah, but my point is, now that we've been given authority over all things, we can easily negate the curse because God
Wait,
has
we
given
can
us
stop
authority.
earthquakes?
Yeah, certain Christians can.
Certain Christians can stop earthquakes?
Yeah, if Elijah can call down fire from heaven and the sea can be split.
Wait
you're
a
telling me
minute,
that
what the
stopping-
fuck? Which Christian has stopped an earthquake?
It's just logic.
It's just, can you give me an example of this happening?
Okay, wait. So you're telling me
What?
if Moses can split the Red Sea, right?
Oh,
and
I don't
Elijah
think that
can
that
call down
happened,
fire
by the
from
way.
heaven. Okay, yeah, but I'm saying if we're consistent with like the biblical narrative and they can do all these things, you're telling me that them stopping an earthquake is far-fetched.
So, as far as I'm aware, the age of miracles, even under the Christian worldview, the age of miracles is over. There are no miracles, no prophets, not anymore. At least not
That's
until
not
Jesus returns, right?
No.
Oh, wait, so there are people alive today who can stop earthquakes?
Yeah, but they're not going to be around us because they're
Wait, why
too busy.
aren't they stopping earthquakes then? There was a horrible earthquake in Turkey like 5 years ago that killed 80,000 people. Why didn't they stop that earthquake?
Because no one probably stood up. There always has to be an intercessor.
What do you mean no one stood up? There were lots of people standing up as they were running away from the earthquake.
No. I mean, like, there has to be an intercessor in place to prevent calamity.
Sorry, you're telling me that there are humans alive that can stop earthquakes, but they're just not?
No, because fam, look at all the Christians in the world and how most of them live.
There's like 2 billion or so. Why aren't any of them stopping the earthquakes?
Because the way the world has been designed is to corrupt Christians.
The way the world is designed is to corrupt Christians. There are 2 billion
Yes.
Christians or so, right?
Yeah, and a lot of
Okay,
us
so why
have
aren't any of
been-
them stopping earthquakes? Why aren't
Because
you out there stopping earthquakes?
Man, you know how much dedication and how much time you have to spend on the present stuff, that kind of authority, and I'm still starting
Wait,
my walk.
what? Sorry, how do you acquire this authority to stop earthquakes?
You have to spend a lot of time in God's presence.
So, like, the Pope can the Pope stop earthquakes?
And the Pope, I'm not a Catholic. I don't believe.
Well, yeah,
in
but
the
surely you
Pope.
believe that the Pope is quite close to God, even if he's not
No.
like handpicked. Do you
Fam,
don't
the
you
Pope
don't
is not of God.
you think that do you think that the Pope is not like a good Christian?
The Pope is not of God.
Do you think that the Pope is a good Christian?
The Pope is not even a Christian. He's just wearing that. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Wait, so do you think that the Pope? Hold on, this is crazy. You don't think that the Pope believes that Jesus rose from the dead and is the Messiah?
Man, did God not say that if you are of Him, the world would not love you, but if you are of the world, then the world would love you? If
So
the
you're telling
Pope was
so you're telling me that I should hate Christians because that makes them not of the world.
No, I'm not saying hate Christians. I'm saying like, okay,
But
for
if the
example-
world loves them, then they would be of this world. So I
No,
should
that's
hate
not-
Christians?
No, that's not what you're trying to twist what I said. I didn't say that.
But then what? So should
I'm
Christians
saying-
want to be loved, or should they not want to be loved?
I'm saying we're talking about the Pope. The Pope
Yeah,
is
the Pope.
not. He's not like, I don't think God established him as what he is.
Well, maybe
Because
you
if-
don't, but surely he's devoted to Jesus, right? He's devoted
then
to
what-
like Christianity.
No, you judge them by their works. How many people has he raised from the dead?
I don't think anybody alive has raised from the dead.
No, but I'm saying there's people that do that in the world, but we just wouldn't
Who?
hear about it.
Wait, why haven't we heard about it? Everybody has a smartphone these days. Why haven't we heard about this?
Because the media would not push it.
So this is the media's fault?
No, for example, like I've heard that there's
So
persecution.
then how did you
of-
find out about it?
Because when you watch testimonies, Christian testimonies.
Wait, so the media does report it?
No, it's not the media. Like you actually have to go out of your way to look for that corner of the internet.
So like what you're telling me is that somebody will go onto the internet and say, I just rose somebody from the dead, and then you just believe them?
But these things barely have any views. It will have like 1,000
Wait, no, you didn't answer my
views.
question. You just believe people when they tell you this?
No, because I obviously judge them by what they're saying and see if it's biblical.
So if somebody says, yeah, I spoke in tongues, I removed, I had a spiritual experience and then I rose somebody from the dead, you would believe them?
No, I don't trust them because of what they say. I trust
Okay,
them.
so
of-
how would, what would it, What kind of YouTube video would you have to see in order to believe that somebody resurrected somebody else from the dead?
If it aligns with scripture, the things that they're saying.
Okay, so can you give me an example?
Okay, for example, right, this person was given a testimony about how they had an encounter with Christ and the spiritual world, and they were talking about the things in the world that Christians would never suspect are stopping them from having intimacy with God, right? And an example of them was wigs. Like women wearing wigs. They said that that's not how God made you. And the fact that you're wearing a wig is an offense to God because you're basically saying that your creator did not make you.
What does that have to do with a man being able to raise somebody else from the dead?
No, I'm saying, he's saying that it's small things like this that prevent Christians from being able to do miracles. And he's saying that people that are set apart are the people that go to their creator as they are. And they spend a lot of time in the presence.
What does this have to do with raising somebody from the dead?
Yeah, because that's what's preventing people from being able to do miracles.
Wait a minute. So then nobody can stop earthquakes, is what you're telling me?
No, my guy. The people that can, even if they did, you would not know that they did it.
Why not? Why wouldn't they say, "Yeah, I stopped that earthquake"? Why wouldn't we have evidence of an earthquake that starts and then it just abruptly stops? Why doesn't that happen? That would be baffling.
Because if they can stop the earthquake, then they'll stop the principality before the earthquake even happened. But you never know
how would they know? How would they know it's about to happen?
Because they can see in the spirit.
They can see the tectonic plates in the spirit?
No, they would see the person that's about to cause it, and then they'll
People
stop
don't cause earthquakes. What?
No, spirits can cause earthquakes.
Tectonic plates cause earthquakes.
Bro, you don't even know what's possible. You don't know what, like, I'm telling you.
Do you know what a tectonic plate is?
Yeah, I know what tectonic.
Okay, so tectonic plates just kind of move, and when they bump into each other, they cause earthquakes.
Yeah, so you're telling me that every natural disaster is completely explainable.
Yes.
Even the ones that science have been like, we don't know why this happened.
Give me an example.
For example, recently, I don't remember which country it was, but they had like a ridiculous amount of earthquakes, and then some creatures that were normally at the depths of the ocean came to the surface.
You got to give me specifics, otherwise I can't engage with your example.
I don't remember. It wasn't too long ago, but it was like a place where there was continuous earthquakes. I don't remember the name of the place.
Okay, I'm gonna Google continuous earthquakes.
Like, it was like a ridiculous amount of earthquakes.
News. Is it Sumatra?
I don't remember, man. I'm being honest. I don't remember.
Because I don't think that this happened. I think you're kind of making this up.
I'm not gonna make that up. They said that some weird fishes were coming from the depths of the ocean, that they don't come to the surface often. How can I make that up?
You could literally just be making it up. I mean, if you can't give me details, I just can't engage with that.
Well, okay, I don't remember exactly where it was, but I know it happened.
And if I said, I know it happened that Jesus came back from the dead and said, y'all, I'm not the Messiah, don't believe in me, it was actually just all a joke.
No, but I'm sure if you check on the internet, you find it.
I looked, I couldn't find anything. You didn't give me anything to look for.
All I know is the fish look kind of ugly and weird.
Okay, somebody in the comments says Japan and the Doomsday Fish. Does that sound right?
Man, I don't know, man.
Oh, okay, so you don't know if this is it?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie and say I know exactly what it is, but I did read about it.
Okay, I can't engage with that, sorry.
It's cool, it's cool. I'm not gonna lie say I know something perfectly if I don't know it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so all I would say is consider why earthquakes are a thing at all. It's very unusual that God would make that a possibility. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Wait, so you're telling me after everything I told you about if Lucifer repented, everyone in hell will be free, you're still pointing the finger at God rather than the devil? Even though the devil is the one keeping everyone
because
captive.
God doesn't have to keep everybody in hell. He could just bring them to heaven. He's all powerful.
Yeah, but you're forgetting who's preventing that from happening.
Wait, sorry, Satan is more powerful than God?
No, because his claim is
God
legal.
could do it, right? Who cares about legality? God's God.
Yeah, but
he can do whatever he wants.
You can't. No, but then that means you're unjust, and if you do that, then justice has to die.
Wait, so God is bound. He can't be merciful and bring people to heaven because he's bound by his just feature.
Okay, wait. If God is infinite, is his justice infinite? Yes or no?
That depends on your theology.
Okay, wait. Is his mercy infinite?
Again, that depends on your theology.
Like, that's the Christian theology right there.
So if it's both, then you have a contradiction. He can't be infinitely just and infinitely merciful. Those two things are contradictory.
But then you have to think, what's preventing people in hell from not being reached by God's infinite mercy, if not the legal claim
presumably,
of the devil?
well, I mean, it just seems like you have a contradiction. If God is infinitely merciful and infinitely powerful, then it seems like God should have been merciful and brought those souls to heaven. If he can't do it, then he's not infinitely powerful.
Yeah, but then if he just lets anyone into heaven, then that's him being irresponsible, because if the rebellion of Lucifer caused so much misery, he's gonna let it happen again and let anyone in again.
I mean, he could, or he could just prevent the rebellion. I mean, like, the point is he's God. He should be able to stop all of this, right?
No, but then you're just saying, oh, because you're all powerful, you should make sure
that's what all powerful means, so long as there's no inherent contradictions. Yeah.
Well, so from your perspective, as long as you're all powerful, you should do everything in your power to prevent misery, right?
Well, if you're all powerful and all merciful, yeah, that is a consequence of those two features.
No, but then by doing that, you create more misery, because look at it this way. Let's look at life.
How does that figure?
From an earthly perspective, like a parent and a child. By the parent trying to guide the child and trying to impose on the child rebels even more.
What?
You see what I'm saying?
No, I don't understand that. In what? Why do you think that that's the case?
Yeah, because when the parent is raising the child, if the parent is trying to warn the child saying, don't do this, don't do that, the parent has insight and knows what's going to happen. And they're trying to warn the child saying, don't go down this path. But the more the parent tries to warn the child, the more the child rebels against the wisdom of the parent.
Yeah, maybe. Not always, but maybe sometimes.
Yeah, maybe, but not always. So it's a possibility of rebellion. So by
rebellion's
God
a possibility.
trying to forcefully stop you from making choices, you're going to rebel against him even more. So he's damned.
Wait, hold on. That's not analogous. The two things are not analogous. One, giving a warning saying, hey, don't do this, bad outcomes will follow, and forcefully trying to prevent something from doing a bad thing. Those are not the same thing. All I'm saying is that, look, it's pretty straightforward. If you had a God that was perfectly merciful, all-loving, and all-powerful, then that thing would want to prevent as much misery as possible, right?
Yeah, and he did. That's why
so you're telling me that the state that we're in right now, that is the minimal amount of mercy possible? Sorry, the minimal amount of misery possible. That the world we live in is the best possible world. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, whether it's minimum or maximum is irrelevant.
No, it's very relevant, because if there could be less misery, then the fact that there isn't less misery should be really, really problematic for your view, because then it just seems like God doesn't care about minimizing misery. And if he's all powerful and he's all loving,
the Bible already addresses this, because the Bible says that the sufferings in this world is nothing compared to the glory in the future world, meaning we're in a finite time.
But we agree that if there could be less misery in this world, then and God's not enacting that world with less misery, then he's just allowing, or he's just enabling more misery than is necessary, which is just not something an all-loving being would do.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but whether it's less or more is completely negated by the infinite joy you would experience in eternity.
It's not. I mean,
yes, it is.
So to be clear, from the north, if I told you, yeah, I'm going to torture you for the remaining 70 years of your life, and then you're going to go to heaven, you'd be fine with that?
Well,
the alternative is I don't torture you, and then you go to heaven after 70 years. Which one would you prefer?
So you're accusing God of being a torturer?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, it's obviously hyperbole, but yeah, essentially.
Wait. If you have that much smoke for God, why don't you have no smoke for the devil?
I don't think either of them exist, but I think that if you presuppose that God does exist, then God could do away with the devil if he wanted to.
I just told you that the only reason that people in hell can't go to heaven is because of Satan's legal claim, and you're still angry at God over.
God could just vanish the devil if he wanted to. He could just make the devil disappear, right?
But then you're not just.
How is that not just?
You can't be just and do that.
Why not? God
because
did that. God did that to all of the people during the flood, right? Or even worse, actually, he made all of them go to hell, which is even worse than disappearing entirely, right?
You don't know that. You don't know that.
Well, wait a minute.
We don't know what
hold on. Yes, we do. Because
we don't know what happened
the whole
to them
business, yes, we do. The whole business of the flood was that the only reason
God
saved... Please, let me finish. The only reason why God saved Noah and his family was because Noah and his family were the only righteous people alive. Meaning that nobody else was righteous. And so, under the Christian worldview, they wouldn't have gone to heaven. They would have either been sent to the void, ceased to exist, or they would have gone to hell. Those are your only two options.
Yeah, but then you're saying that with the limited information that you have.
That's what's written in the Bible. It's written in the Bible that they were not righteous.
Yeah, they weren't righteous, but you don't know whether they went to hell or not.
Wait, can non-righteous people get to heaven?
Well, you mean living a non-righteous life and dying and going to heaven?
Yeah, and it's not just like doing one or two sins here. It's being like sufficiently evil that God's like, yeah, we got to wipe out the whole earth.
Okay, wait, but what about this? What about this though? Let's say they did go to hell essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Christ came down to die and go and preach the gospel to them. Did they go to heaven? Yes or no?
Wait, can Jesus go to hell and preach the gospel to people and bring them up to heaven?
He went to hell.
Wait, so Jesus can bring people out of hell to heaven?
No, when he died, he went to hell to preach the gospel to them, and whoever accepted it would have gone to heaven with him. So even if you
does it say that in the Bible?
Okay, I don't remember the exact verse.
I don't think it says that in the Bible at all.
Yes, he does. Jesus went down for 3 days. He said, like, just like Jonah, he's gonna go down to the belly of the beast for 3 days. Where do you think he went?
Why did Jesus go to hell?
To go and preach, to go and get Adam and Eve and all of the descendants of them.
Wait, what? But how did he end up in hell if he died?
Because he went to go and rescue his sheep.
Wait, so how did he end? So he just chose to go to hell. He didn't like
that's
die and get sent to hell.
He didn't get sent to hell.
He just like walked there, basically.
You want to go and take the people that were captive, because remember, Psalm 24 says, "Lift up your head, all ye gates."
So just to be clear, because we got super off topic, why couldn't God just snap his fingers and make Satan disappear?
Because then there will be no justice. You're ruling by power alone.
How is that not justice? Satan is the ultimate injustice, right?
Yeah, but then if you're just like,
if you get rid of injustice, that seems like you're fighting on the side of justice.
No, what? But then all the other angels are just gonna look at him and be like, "Oh, your justice is not been proven. You've not been tested. You've not been tried. You just get rid of whoever does not please you. You destroy them instantly."
Wait, so the angels are testing God?
No, they're not gonna test him, but everyone's
that's literally. Don't say they're not gonna test him. You literally just described the angels testing God.
They're not testing him, but they're gonna doubt him. Like, oh, anyone that questions your ways, you just destroy them.
Yeah, he does do that. That's what God does. That's like a thing that he does over and over again in the Bible.
No, but then you're talking from a biased perspective towards God. Because
but that is what God does. Like God did that with Noah's with the flood with Noah. He did that with Sodom and Gomorrah. He did that with the Amalekites. He did that with David. Well, he sort of did this with David and his concubines. Like this is the thing that God does all the time. He just smites people who he doesn't like. It's like as Preston said, it's kind of like his favorite thing to do. It's like the whole thing.
Finite creatures opposed to infinite creatures, which are the angels, which are eternal.
And
men
somehow one is so it's somehow more okay to end a finite thing's life.
I'm saying you can't end a creature that's eternal. Because
why not? God's all powerful. He can do whatever he wants.
That does not make any sense, because then there will be no justice.
Wait, sorry, you're telling me a world without Satan would be a world without justice?
No, I'm saying because you don't know what Satan did and what he said to God. He made supplications to say that God never allowed them God never allowed a world where there is good and evil.
Sorry, just to be clear, what's going to happen after Jesus returns? What's going to happen to Satan?
He's going to get cast into hell forever.
Oh, so he's just going to be in the same place that he was the whole time?
Satan is not in hell. He's free. He's the prince of the powers of the air.
Oh, so why couldn't God just send him to hell now?
Because it's the time that's been given to him.
So God's just allowing injustice for
No,
no
God's
reason.
not allowing injustice. He's not
I
allowing
mean, yeah,
injustice.
he could just God could just cast Satan into hell now, prevent
but
all of
Adam
this
and
injustice.
You're forgetting that Adam and Eve gave over dominion of the earth to Satan, so his time
Yeah,
of
but-
dominion is not over yet.
Oh, so God's just allowing him to produce injustice in this world?
God's not allowing anything. He took it.
Sure
he
he
took
is.
it legally from Adam and Eve.
Who
He
cares
took it
about?
from Adam and Eve.
Why are we? Wait, you know that God doesn't have to follow laws, right? He's God.
Oh,
There's
so
not
you're
like-
saying God?
Like, you know, like God is the lawgiver. He's not the law follower.
Oh, so you're saying your version of God is a God that should establish laws that he himself cannot uphold. That does not make sense. Because then he'll
God
be a
doesn't have
hypocrite.
to follow laws. That's the whole business. Like, he can do whatever he wants.
Okay, wait. So if I told you, right, that you can't run down this hallway, yeah, and then you see me running down the hallway all the time, what does that make me?
It makes you wiser than I can possibly comprehend, and I can't
So wait.
understand why you're doing it.
I told you not to run down the hallway, but then I'm running down the hallway. What does that make me?
So, to be clear, when God instructs you to not commit murder, but then God commits murder, what does that make God?
Anyone?
When does
did
God
God
murder
murder
anyone?
anyone?
The flood, Sodom and Gomorrah.
That's not
Those are-
murder. That's judgment.
Oh, so but can I do judgment?
Okay, for example, let's say you're good.
Yeah, sorry, just to sneeze.
Alright.
What
Yeah,
about
I'm
when
saying,
God causes an adultery? Sorry, what about when God causes adultery?
Adultery
Yep.
causes adultery, like cheating on your wife.
Yeah. What about when God
When-
causes that?
God doesn't cause adultery.
Yeah, he does. Let me find the verse for you. 2 Samuel 16. I think it's actually 2 Samuel 11 is the one that I'm thinking of. This is a lovely verse. Let me see if I can find it. Or is it 12? It's the one about Uriah the Hittite and all of this stuff. Yeah, so there's a whole thing with David being like a dick to the wife of Uriah the Hittite. It's a whole thing. It's 2 Samuel 12. And so the Lord says to David, "Out of your household I am going to bring calamity on you. Before your very eyes I will take your wives and give them to one who is close to you, and he will sleep with your wives in broad daylight. You did it in secret, but I will do this thing in broad daylight before all Israel." Let's fast forward to when it actually happens, 2 Samuel 16. It is David's son that actually ends up taking David's wives and sleeps with them. It says, so Ahithophel answered, "Sleep with your father's concubines, whom he left to take care of the palace. Then all Israel will hear that you have made yourself obnoxious to your father, and the hands of everyone with you will be more resolute." So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof, and he slept with his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. Now, question: if a son sleeps with his father's concubines, is that adultery if they're not married?
Okay, wait. So you're saying that God caused that?
Yes. God
but-
said, "I'm going to make this happen."
Yeah, but then here's the perspective you're missing though. That means that the desire to do that was always in Absalom's heart, and God was always stopping it from happening. And then when God moved out of the way, it happened. All he did was step out the way.
So God is the sufficient.
All he did was step out the way.
So to be clear, God is the sufficient reason for why this happened. Had God not taken action, this would not have happened. Correct?
No, I'm saying God was a protecting barrier around David, which prevented that from happening. Meaning the desire to do that was already in Absalom's heart.
To be clear, had God not taken this action, the adultery would not have happened. Correct?
Yeah, but you're forgetting that
So
God says...
because God took the action, the adultery happened. Seems like God caused adultery to happen.
No. He didn't cause that to happen. That was already in my man's heart to do it.
That's irrelevant. Had God not taken this action, the adultery wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, wait.
But God did take the action, so the adultery happened. That just means that God caused it.
Okay, wait.
God has causal responsibility for it.
Okay, wait, but before God even spoke on it, was that desire already in Absalom's heart?
There is no evidence that that's the case in the Bible.
Yeah, but you can't act contrary to your own heart, because then that means your free will was overridden.
Yeah, this is an example of God overriding Absalom's free will. Definitely.
No, come on. What kind of accusation is that?
Why would a guy willingly sleep with his dad's wives?
Was this not the same guy that tried to overthrow his father's throne?
Yeah, no, that was the whole thing. But why would he want to sleep with his stepmom? What guy would want to sleep with his stepmoms?
Oh, but if you're willing to take your father's throne by killing your father, then what wouldn't you do?
You would want to sleep. Wait, you would want to sleep with your stepmom?
I didn't say that. I didn't.
Okay,
say that.
So why would Absalom want to sleep with his stepmom?
If Absalom was willing to take the throne, which means he has to kill his father, what wouldn't he do?
By the way, he didn't kill his father. He didn't kill his father.
But he wanted to. He wanted the throne. So how else would he get the throne without killing the father?
Well,
what wouldn't such a person do?
He took it, and then David fled.
Yeah, but I'm saying, what wouldn't such a person do?
Well, I would imagine that he still wouldn't sleep with his stepmoms.
So if
I don't know, that's really weird, bro.
So you're telling me that someone that's willing to kill their own dad?
I mean, you're doing a lot of inference here. I'm just reading what it says. God says, "I'm going to make this happen," and then it happens. God is the thing that made the adultery happen.
Yeah, but I'm bringing clarity, and I'm saying that the heart of Absalom was already perverse.
The text says that God is going to make this happen.
Yeah,
God made it happen. That's what the text says.
Yeah, but all
so
God
it's
did
God's
was
fault.
step out of the way. No, because God's protection.
No, that's not what it says.
Already.
It says, "I am going to make this happen."
Yeah, by moving out of the way.
It's that look. God literally says, "I will do this thing."
Yeah. Okay, wait.
I will take your wives and give them to one who is close to you.
Yes. But my
you
question
did it in secret, but I will do this thing in broad daylight before. That's God taking ownership of this.
Okay, yeah. But
God is taking the fall on this. He's saying, "Yeah, this is all me."
Yeah, but was Absalom's heart perverse even before?
You're adding to the text. Aren't you supposed to treat the? You absolutely are. You absolutely
Absalom was a perverse guy, willing to kill his own father. Of course, it was in his heart to sleep with his own. You know what I'm saying? He was a perverse guy.
Just to be clear, God is the person who made Absalom that way.
Oh man, no.
He said he's going to bring calamity. God said, "Out of your household, I am going to bring calamity on you."
Yeah, but as a consequence of David's sin.
Yeah. So David sinned, and then God's like, "Because you sinned, I'm going to make your son rise up against you, and I'm going to force your son to sleep with your wives." It seems like God encouraged adultery. It not only encouraged, God made adultery happen.
Okay. So let's put it this way.
Another one. This one's just an easy dunk. Sorry.
No, you didn't dunk nothing because I told you.
No, I mean that one's kind of a dunk. But also, was God married? Was God married to Mary?
Well, what? What kind of question
because
is that?
God impregnated Mary, right?
Bro, what kind of question is that?
Well, Mary was married to Joseph, right?
Yeah.
And so Joseph didn't get Mary pregnant. Who got Mary pregnant?
Well, the Holy Ghost.
So to be clear, somebody else got Mary pregnant besides Mary's husband, right?
Wait, but it wasn't the way human beings would do it. So how can?
Well, yeah, it was magic, but it's still adultery.
Okay, wait, so can the creation
just magic
do
adultery?
What he pleases with the creation?
Oh, okay. So, but I thought the creator couldn't. Otherwise, it would be do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, but it's not. No, but I'm saying.
God is allowed to do adultery now?
No. It's not adultery.
Of course it is. Mary wasn't married to the Holy Ghost. Mary was married to Joseph. And Joseph wasn't the one who got Mary pregnant.
You're telling me that by God choosing Mary as a worthy vessel for Jesus to come into this world, that is adultery?
Yeah, of course it is, because the only person who should be getting Mary pregnant is Joseph.
Yeah, but
otherwise it's adultery.
Wait, but what's adultery though? What's adultery? There has to be a woman cheating on her husband, breaking their marriage vows.
Yeah, in this case, Mary cheated on Joseph with God.
She cheated. That's common. You know that's not even. That don't even make sense. It don't even make sense.
By the way, it's God that did the adultery. I don't think Mary consented.
Okay, wait. So
unless you think Mary consented it. Wait, hold on. Did Mary consent?
Consent to what?
To being impregnated with Jesus.
That's a good question, nigga. That's a good question. But I see what you're trying to do. I see what you're trying to. You're a sneaky guy. You're actually good at this. But it's irrelevant,
Did she
though. It's
consent?
irrelevant.
I mean, it's really relevant. Because if she didn't consent, then it's rape. If she did consent,
rape?
then Mary did the adultery.
There's nothing physical about it.
Sorry, so what would you call it if somebody impregnated you without your consent?
Wait, so you're telling me that by God choosing to come into this world through Mary, you're calling that rape?
Well, I mean, what would you call it if somebody impregnated you without your consent?
I'm a man, I can't get pregnant.
Okay, suppose that, what would you call it if, do you have a girlfriend, a wife?
No.
Okay, you have a mom, right? And I don't know how old your mom is.
Okay, let's say I had a wife though for the
Okay, let's say that you have a wife, and then just like somebody, you wake up, like you're just sleeping, whatever, doing your normal thing.
Yeah.
And you wake up, and she realizes that in the middle of the night, someone came in and like artificially inseminated her. So now she's pregnant without her consent. What would you call that?
Yeah, but here's the point you're missing. It wasn't like a physical insemination, and if according to the biblical narrative,
Jesus was physical. So at what point was at what point was Jesus? At what point did Jesus start? What point during the fetal development did Jesus become a physical being? Was there a physical holy sperm, or was it just a zygote that just appeared in the uterus? Like, what's going on here?
It's unknowable. It's unknowable.
Okay, but regardless, the point still stands. If she was non-consensually impregnated, that seems basically like grape, if not grape explicitly.
Wait. But you don't know that. You don't know that. You know
Well,
why?
if it was consensual, then that means that she committed adultery in her heart.
Wait. Because you're forgetting the part that in the Bible it says, "Before you were formed, I knew you," meaning that before we come on earth, we are told about the mission.
That's irrelevant to my question.
Meaning that the consent.
Thank you for sending a subscription there, Amir. I appreciate you. Look, look, it's so much worse. It's so much worse for you if she consented. If she consented, that means that she committed adultery in her heart.
No,
right?
Because when she consented was probably when she was still in heaven before she came on earth.
So then she committed adultery in her heart.
On when she wasn't even born yet.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute. So you're telling me that unborn beings can consent?
No, not unborn. Jesus said, "Before you were formed, I knew you," meaning that before we came to earth, we were in heaven. And
wait,
when
so unborn beings can consent
while you're in heaven.
That's what you're saying. So you can consent while you're in heaven. You can consent for your physical body.
Yeah, you be like, "Lord, use me for your glory." Yes.
So to be clear, then, it seems like Mary actually consented to be impregnated by another man while married to Joseph. And that sounds like committing adultery in your heart.
No, that's just that's a perverse interpretation, man.
It's a pretty devastating one, to be honest.
Are you trolling me now? Like, I feel like you're trolling
I mean,
me.
That's exactly what I would say if I had just had my entire worldview blown out.
It's not a world, like, there's nothing that you're saying right now that's actually harming the Christian faith. Because if you go and ask,
Mary's either an adulterer or she was raped.
See, only an atheist will say that, though.
That's because Christians would never dare to think about it that way because it would be devastating to their worldview.
No, because what's that thing that Jesus said? To the crooked, everything is crooked. You know what I'm saying? So maybe your mind is like that. So of course you're going to see.
Look, if a 14-year-old girl was married to an older man and then suddenly got impregnated, and the older man said, "Hey, it wasn't me," I would be very concerned about that girl's safety.
Wow,
wouldn't you?
This is actually shocking.
Wouldn't you be worried about that?
How are you accusing God of rape? This is
well,
ridiculous.
I mean, it was either consensual or it wasn't, in which case either, and by the way, 14-year-olds can't consent, so it's grape regardless. But even if she consented, that means that she committed adultery in her heart.
When she was still in heaven.
Yeah, so she committed adultery in her heart because she wasn't married while she was in heaven, was she?
How could she commit adultery?
Wait, sorry. Was she married in heaven?
No one's
okay. So then, so if you consent to be inseminated while unmarried, is that committing adultery in your heart?
She's not married while she wasn't in heaven with God.
Okay. So then she committed adultery in her heart because you can't get impregnated while you're not married, right?
Yeah, but there was no legal contract while she was in heaven. So
wait a minute. So are you telling me that if a woman is not married and she gets pregnant, that's fine?
Well, say that again.
If a woman is not married and then gets pregnant, that's fine, right?
If a woman is not married and she gets pregnant, that's fine.
Yeah.
No, but that's not the context of what we're saying, though, bro.
Well, if a woman
We're
is
saying-
married to somebody else and then gets pregnant, but not by that person, is that fine?
Yeah, but we're not. If we're talking about, okay, wait, now let's.
Are
look
you
at this
are
way.
you generally okay with like a woman being married to a dude and then having somebody else's baby? Are you okay with that generally?
We're not talking about somebody else, though. We're talking about God.
Sure, we are. I mean, is God the same person as Joseph?
Of course not.
Then it is somebody else.
Your mind is actually crooked, man. I can't lie. I feel like.
I mean, the whole
this is
story,
just-
like to be clear, the whole story is like pretty obviously made up. Mary
No,
had
no,
an
no.
affair and
Yeah.
didn't want to admit it to her husband, so she
No.
said, it was God that did it.
Yeah,
Like
but
that's
how are
obviously
you
what
angry?
happened, right?
Yeah, but wait, but how are you? You're the one that's saying this, but the husband himself was not upset by it. He understood what happened.
Yeah, that's because he bought her stupid lie.
So you're saying that Jesus was not the son of God, that he was.
Yeah, I mean,
just-
like kind of obviously, yeah.
So you're wow. This is actually ridiculous, man.
I mean,
This is
like,
bad.
if so suppose that like just for a moment, suppose that Mary actually did commit adultery and got pregnant with another man's baby. Well, her two options are either A, be stoned to death for committing adultery, or B, lie and say, "Oh, I didn't sleep with anybody else. It was a miracle. God did it." Which one's more likely?
This is not even a conversation. This is just
I mean,
This
you
is
should
just the
answer.
heart.
Can you answer the question?
no, because there's nothing to answer because it's a
Well,
ridiculous
it was a question, so questions do generally.
No, because this is just a
request
reflection
answers.
of how hardened your heart is towards God. You're never angry at the devil for anything. You know what I'm
Well,
saying? You've
yeah,
never
that's
accused
because
the devil
God
of
created
doing
the
anything
devil.
wrong.
God create. Well,
Yeah,
I don't
but
believe in
that's
any
what
of
I'm
it.
saying.
I'm critiquing your worldview, though. Yeah.
No, how can you know about like the biblical worldview, but you have no smoke?
How can I
for the
know about
devil?
it? Because I've read about it.
And you have no smoke for the devil, but you have all the smoke for the one that's trying to save you.
Well, I don't think either of them are real.
How can you not look at the world around you?
Yeah, the world around me has more misery than would be expected under a world with God.
Okay,
in
wait,
it.
wait.
And so
Okay,
that
wait.
leads me
From
to
your
conclude that God doesn't exist.
From an atheist worldview, you pinpoint me an explanation of mankind's inclination towards wickedness and sin, or just evil in general.
That's exactly. So, antisocial behavior, which is what you're describing, is exactly what's expected.
No. That's not what I'm saying.
Sure, it is.
I'm
Unless
talking
you
about
think that like having sex is sin. If you think having sex
no,
is sin,
I'm
then
talking
that's
about
like
like
just
serial
evolutionary biology.
killers.
Yeah, that's
serial killers.
those are examples of antisocial behavior.
Yeah, but pinpoint me the exact cause, not an explanation.
So
The exact cause, the
we
foundation of
w-
the problem.
we would expect to see some degree of antisocial behavior as a result of evolution. Like, we would expect misery to show up in the presence of evolution because evolution doesn't care about the world being good and happy, right? We would expect some level of this. We would expect some level of good, some level of evil.
Oh, so you expect suffering in the world?
Yes, under an
then why are
atheist
you
worldview, it
complaining?
is entirely expected, which is why it's
Then
not
why are you
surprising, and which is
complaining
why it
about
better explains the world that we see.
Then why are you complaining about it then?
Because under your worldview, you should not expect it, and the fact that it's there is a problem.
No, what are you talking about? The Bible is all about suffering from the beginning.
Yeah, it's all about explaining suffering, because without that explanation,
No,
the whole
no,
worldview
no.
doesn't make sense.
No, not explaining suffering, actual suffering. People in the Bible suffered. All the apostles in the New Testament suffered. Jesus
Oh,
lived
did
a
they?
life
Wait,
of
hold on,
misery.
did they?
Yeah, look at the deaths they died.
Oh, wait, which deaths? Which ones?
Like the ones that some were stoned to death. Stephen in the Bible that was stoned to death.
Is that the one where there's a talking door?
A talking door.
Yeah. Okay, so this is an Acts. Is Acts the one with this talking door?
I don't know, bro.
No, that's in no, that's in Revelation, sorry. Yeah, so Stephen is stoned to death. In Acts 7:54 through 8:2, apparently. So okay, we have one. Do we have any extra biblical sources that this happened, or is this just the biblical source here?
Well, I don't know the rest of the deaths in it, but I know that they died horrible deaths.
No, there's a talking door in Revelation, by the way. But yes, there's also a talking cross in the Gospel of Peter. So Stephen is stoned to death, but we don't have any historical source of that. It's just a claim, I guess.
Well, the Bible is a historical claim.
Well, no, I mean it's a biblical claim, right? This is the source of the claim, so we need to corroborate that claim, right?
Oh, you mean like cross-referencing that?
Yeah. We would like to have historical evidence for this claim.
You're allowed to have that view. I'll give you that.
Like, generally, it's a good thing to be able to corroborate things. Yeah.
Okay, wait. So let me ask you this, though. Let me ask you this: is God, according to like your worldview, right? Because you're completely against God. Is God subjectively evil or objectively evil?
Well, I don't think that God is like a real thing, but like
insofar
as like I would say that like Voldemort is a bad guy. I would say that the Christian God, I would say that at least the Christian God during the time of the Israelite Exodus and during the time of the what you would call the Old Testament, that God is a bad guy. That God became a less bad guy during the time of Jesus.
Okay, wait. But is God subjectively evil or objectively evil? You have to pick one.
Well, I don't think that there are such things as objective moral truths. So I don't think that it makes sense to talk about objective evil or objective good, right?
Oh, but then, if God is subjectively evil, on what grounds are you calling him evil?
Yeah, on the grounds that I view it as evil. That's what a subjectively evil means.
Yeah, but then you have no grounds to call God evil if it's
sure
not
I do. My grounds are based on my values, my the things that I care about, my stances, my views, my beliefs. Those are the grounds on which those are the things on which I ground my subjective
You can't do
morals.
that because from an atheist worldview,
that's what subjectivity is.
No. Because if you believe in the divine and you're saying that God is
by the
evil,
way, this is a huge W pivot. By the way, W pivot to the objective moral argument, I guess.
Yeah, whatever, man. I don't really mind. But I'm saying you can't say that God is evil without saying he's objectively evil, because if you say that he's subjective,
when I say that God is evil, what I mean, in the same way when I say Voldemort is evil, what I mean is that the actions taken by the fictional character Voldemort and the actions taken by the fictional character God are actions that do not align with my stances, do not align with my values, do not align with my upbringing, etc. That's what I mean when I say that these beings or these characters are evil. That's what I mean.
Yeah, but then I'm saying that your claim means nothing. Because
that's okay. Maybe it doesn't need to mean anything to you. I'm telling you what it means to me.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Your claim goes no further than you because you believe that you came from
who cares?
nothing.
That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant for the question at hand.
Exactly. No, but then that makes your point irrelevant because your point
irrelevant. You asked for my view. I gave you my view.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that all your points don't have any substance because you believe.
How does it just wait? Nothing. Because it's subjective. It doesn't have substance. I'm sorry.
No,
if I told you that I like pizza, would that claim not have any substance?
Yeah, but it starts and ends with you. It goes no further.
Okay, so does my desire to have pizza. It doesn't mean that it's meaningless.
So that means that the truth of what you're saying ends with you, which does not make it truth at all.
Wait. So it makes it subjectively true, right?
Yeah,
that's the whole business.
Exactly, meaning that your opinion does not matter because you came from.
What do you
nothing.
mean? It doesn't matter to who? Like that's what an opinion is. It only matters to me. Yeah, that's the whole thing.
Because, okay, wait. You can't do that though, because for you to say
you can't do that. Have you ever spoken with somebody who's not a moral realist?
No, listen to what you're saying. For you to say that God is evil, you have to stand on objective truth.
Why? No. I don't think that there is. I don't think that there are objective moral claims. I don't think that they exist.
Then? How is God evil?
God is evil.
Truth?
When I say that God is evil, what I mean is that God's views and actions don't align with my views and stances. That's what I mean.
Yeah, but then how can you, who believe that you came from nothing, say that God is evil when you
Well, I don't think I
nothing,
came from.
so
By the way, I don't think that I came from nothing. I think that I came from my mother and father.
No.
But
No,
but,
I mean, like,
how is this relevant? Like, what are you doing?
Fam, you don't have a point because you believe that
I don't have a
from
point.
nothing.
I mean, look, I have
Yes.
standards of morality. You have standards of morality. My
Yeah, but then
standards are
that's
my
a-
standards. Your standards are your standards.
Yeah, but
I don't see
saying-
what the problem is.
I'm saying without an objective perspective on morals, you can't say that God is evil.
Sure, I can. I just mean
No, you
something
can't.
different than what you mean.
No, you can't, bro. Because
Yeah, sure I can. I just did.
It starts.
Watch
and
me.
ends
God
with
is
you.
evil.
can't
I
go
did
any
it.
further.
See? I did
Exactly,
it.
but in what? Yeah, but in what worth does your opinion have without objective morality?
Exactly as much worth as yours does under my view. Your
No,
view,
it doesn't,
your
because I'm
objective,
standing on
your
objective
subjective view
truth.
is just as subjective as mine.
Wait, do you have an AI with you
No.
that you can ask? Because please ask. You can't say God is evil without objective truth.
Why not? You just don't understand what moral anti-realism is, do you?
No, fam, enough with them words. Enough with them
Wait,
words.
do you know what that phrase means? Moral anti-realism?
I don't know, but
Okay, so moral anti-realism is the philosophical position, the meta-ethical position, that there are no objective moral truths. There are none. There is zero. There are no such thing. In the same way that
What?
there are no objective preferences about, or objective food preferences, right? There are no facts
Wait,
about
so
the world that tell
grape
you if
wrong?
pizza is delicious.
is grape wrong? Is grape wrong? Yes or no?
Yes, of course it is. And that is a fact.
that-
That is a statement about my stances and about my values.
No, but is that an objective truth?
I
or
don't
not?
think that there are objective truths
But
about
you're
morality.
telling me that. So that means from your worldview, grape can be right.
No, doesn't imply that at all.
Yes, it does.
That's a cool
because if
straw
it's not
man, though.
If it's not objectively wrong, then that means you're saying subjectively it can be right.
No,
You see,
didn't
you
say
see where
that
you're coming
either.
from?
It
That's
could
what's
always
subjective.
be subjectively wrong. That doesn't make it objective.
No. Either grape is subjectively wrong, or it can be subjectively right. It's
It
either
is
objectively
possible.
wrong-
It is possible that it is universally subjectively wrong.
how
in
without
fact-
objective.
In fact, by the way, kind of by definition, it's universally objectively wrong just because of the way that we define grape. But the point is universality and
Yeah.
objectivity are not the same thing, right?
Bro, okay. So give me an example where grape can be right.
I don't think it can be. Do you think it? Well,
Exactly,
no,
so-
you do think it can be because you think that it's fine when Mary gets raped, and when Absalom or when God
No,
causes
let's not
Absalom
go
to
there.
rape
No.
David's wives, right?
We're talking about your worldview, all right?
Well, no, now we're talking about yours because you're
Yeah,
fine
but-
with grape. You're fine with grape towards Mary. You're fine with grape towards David's wives. I can bring up others if you want. that you're fine with.
Okay. You're basically you claiming that what happened to Mary was grape is your
Yep.
subjective worldview. It
No,
starts
there's.
and ends
I mean, like,
with
do you like it is
not
grape
objective.
unless you say that it's consensual. But if it's consensual,
No,
then the question
no,
is,
no.
did she know that she would have been married
That's
when she
your-
made the consent? And did she? If not, then was it really informed consent? In which case, if it wasn't informed consent, then it's grape.
bro. I'm saying from your worldview, if you can't claim something is objectively wrong, then you can't say, oh, this is not a just thing to do because justice.
Okay,
requires
so
objective
I,
morality.
I'm gonna like you've been on for a while, so I should probably move on to another guest. But I'm gonna assign you some reading. Actually, it's not reading. You can just go
I'm not
watch
gonna
about
read
it.
that. You
Well,
believe it was
fine.
great.
You don't have to read. You just go look up Lance Bush. He's I think his YouTube account name is Lance Independent or something like that. His real name is Lance Bush. He's a philosopher. He talks about moral or ethical anti-realism all the time. You should learn about it because the way that the questions that you're asking just indicate that you've never even heard about the position whatsoever.
Yeah, but you can't say that
And like
to me
it's really hard to defend my position against somebody who doesn't even understand the words that I'm saying.
bro. You can't defend your position because you believe that you came from nothing.
I absolutely can, and it's like
No, you can't.
it's
You
not a
used to
particular it's
believe
not a
that.
particularly fringe position either amongst philosophers. So like it's actually a fairly common one. So I would just suggest that you go like read about what moral anti-realism is, because then you might not be saying the stupid things that you are.
Well, you can't make no like finite conclusions, final conclusions without objective morality.
Sure, I can.
No, you can't, because
Yeah,
it's still going to be subjective.
I just don't think it's objective. I think it's subjective. But again,
Then
you seem to be stuck on this issue that, like, yeah, you're just defining what moral anti-realism is, I guess. That, like, yeah, I don't think there are objective moral facts of the world.
Then how can you say God is evil without objective
Because
morality?
when I say evil, what I mean is it doesn't align with my stances and values. That's what I mean
Also,
when
are
I
you
say
good?
evil.
Are you good? Are you good?
Well, yeah, I would think so, because I generally align with my stances and values. There are things, I'm sure that there are things I've done that are bad when they don't align with my stances and values.
So you're claiming that you are good. But
Yeah.
God is evil. And
Yeah,
you have a right to
I've never
judge
caused
God.
grape before.
So there's no possibility of you down the line in the future doing something that's evil.
No, there absolutely is. I can
Exactly,
fail to live
so
up to
you
my
are
own stances.
So you are evil.
No.
All of us are evil.
I don't think so.
Oh, you see, how can you be healed when you don't even believe you're sick?
Healed of what?
Of our sinful nature. You don't
I don't
even
think
believe that
that's
you're sick.
bro. I don't think that sin exists.
Or you don't think that sin exists.
No.
Then how would
I
you
don't believe in
explain-
your magic. I don't believe in your magic bad word. Like, sorry.
Okay, wait. So sin does not exist and all
No.
them things. But human beings have never had a time period of world peace. They're always slaughtering each other. But you think,
Yeah,
oh, these are good
generally. In
creatures.
fact, like generally speaking, the last 70 years, maybe barring the last 20, perhaps the period between, the end of World War II and the beginning of the 1950s was like the most peaceful time in human history. But yeah, humans have generally always been fighting with each other. That's kind of part of the human condition.
Exactly. So how can you explain that without sin? You can't.
I don't think that sin is like some spiritual like evil. I don't think that there are spiritual things.
At least it gives us a foundation for the problem that we can trace. Your worldview doesn't.
So
All
magic
you're
gives
gonna
you a
give us-
foundation for your problem? Okay.
No, but at least we can say Adam and Eve sinned, and that's the origin of evil.
So you can
With
you can blame humanity's wrongdoings on some distant people who didn't exist. That just sounds like
Yeah,
you're
'cause
shifting the blame and not actually taking responsibility.
No, but I'm saying at least it can be traced to a source. In your worldview, you can't trace nothing to a
like
source.
a mythical source
You
that
can't.
didn't exist, but okay.
No. Okay, wait, but then where's your source of all of the like inclination
Human psychology,
towards harming each other?
obviously human
Yeah, but
psychology.
give me the foundation at the very beginning.
Yeah,
You
human
can't.
brains.
See, that is so broad. There's no definition to that. There's no definition.
Human
to your
brains are
worldview.
broad. They're like very specific biological items.
Yeah, but I'm saying give me like a very, very like basic explanation. Because if you ask
Yes,
me
humans are a type of social creature, and social creatures
Yeah.
tend to favor their in-group and disfavor the out-group. And when they disfavor the out-group enough, they have conflict, and that conflict can result in violence.
Yeah, but what is the foundation of this inclination towards favoring
Evolution.
one group over the? Yeah, and what's the foundation of evolution?
The law of large numbers.
And what's the foundation of the law of large?
That's
You gotta have a source.
It's just the law of large numbers is just a statistical truth.
You see, so that's a massive void in your worldview. You don't have
No,
a
it's not.
foundation.
Wait,
All
no,
you have is a massive void.
I'm just like the foundation here is just how large numbers of anything behave. It's the law of large
Exactly,
numbers.
but you have no void, no definition. You have a massive void at the bottom of your worldview
What's
There's
the
no
void?
foundation to it.
Where am I missing something?
because there's no foundation to your worldview.
I don't know what that means.
Because if you ask me why are human beings the way they are, I'll just say the tree of the the fruit of the tree.
Yeah,
If
you would
you
give
can't
some
give a
made up
definition.
explanation, right?
No, it's not made up explanation. Because
It
it's
absolutely is
recorded
made up.
history.
I mean, like it definitively didn't happen. We can show this scientifically, right? Like
Okay,
we know
then
that
at
we know that
least
humans
make
existed
something,
for
bro.
more than
At
6,000
least-
years.
Okay, then why can't you, with your broad atheist imagination, make up a foundation for your worldview?
I gave you.
Since you guys are so
to
wise.
be clear, I gave you the reason why humans behave this way. You just didn't like the explanation.
That's so vague though. It's so vague.
It perhaps it's vague to you, but that is the explanation.
Yeah, but when did they start having that inclination? Can you
That
pinpoint
inclination has been present in every social species and is present in every social species. Every
Yeah,
social
and when was
species
the
has
beginning of this?
has interspecies conflicts. It's a thing that every
Yeah,
social
and-
species does.
And did evolution like how?
Yes,
did
this
evolution
is a
see that this was
consequence of
necessary?
the evolution of social species. Yeah.
of abiogenesis, of life coming from non-life, and all them things.
This
You see,
this is a consequence of the evolution of social species. Yeah.
So that means that evolution created you to fight your fellow man and favor some.
If you want to phrase it that way, you could.
And that's the worldview you choose to believe in.
Well, it's the worldview that's backed up by scientific evidence, observation of the world around us,
and you think
good theoretical modeling.
Ridiculous.
Whereas your worldview is backed up by a 2,000-year-old book written by Iron Age farmers.
Yeah, but at least I could trace my worldview to an origin.
To two people who didn't exist 6,000 years ago, who clearly weren't the first people because modern humans have been around for 300,000 years, whereas your Adam and Eve supposedly existed only 6,000 years ago.
Name me one civilization here from 300,000 years ago. Show me some data.
There were no civilizations 300,000 years ago. There were humans 300,000 years ago.
Yeah,
modern humans are what I'm referring to are modern anatomical humans. So these are humans, these are people that are anatomically identical to us, but they didn't have societies in the same way that we do because they hadn't settled down. They were hunter-gatherers.
Yeah, but even if like you were like that, there should be recorded history, like writing on walls.
Why? They didn't have writing yet. Although we do have writing from like 45,000 years ago, like cave writing in the south of France, if I remember correctly.
And who verified that?
Who verified that that's from 45,000 years ago?
Yeah, a bunch of scientists that can be bought for the highest bidder. Those are the people you put.
To be clear,
in.
Have you ever met a scientist before?
It don't matter though. It don't matter.
Have you ever? No, please. Have you ever met a scientist before?
It doesn't matter. The point is,
answer the question from the north. Have you ever met a scientist before?
Well, I've seen them online. That's enough.
Have you ever met a scientist before?
I've seen them online.
Answer the question, please.
I've seen them online. Huh?
Answer the question. Have you ever met a scientist before?
Does my science teacher count? I'm joking.
No, probably not.
Hey.
I'm waiting.
I said my science teacher.
No, your science teacher doesn't count. They're not a scientist. They're a science teacher.
I know. So that means no, isn't it?
Okay, well then I'm happy to pop your scientist cherry. You have met your first scientist. So scientists generally care more about the research than they care about money because being a scientist generally doesn't pay well. So if they cared about money, they wouldn't have become a scientist to begin with.
Wait, but my question is, can they be bought?
Probably less easily than basically any other career, because one of the features of being a scientist is you have to be okay with not making a lot of money for a very long time, if only because you do it for the love of the game, not because you care about money. Because scientists can make way more money by doing something else than being scientists. Being a scientist pays very, very little.
You're using yourself to generalize scientists. You know what I'm saying? I feel like
this is just a feature of like being a scientist, right? Being a scientist doesn't pay well, and you have to go to school for 10 years to do it. So if you were interested in just making the most money you possibly could, you wouldn't do that. You would go do something else. Rather, you would just the only reason anybody would ever become a scientist is for the love of the game.
That's from your worldview, though. Like, that's not.
Wait, and so to be clear, my worldview is better. Is more foundation. Sorry, that's not a good word. My worldview is more has a better foundation than yours does about this. If only because I actually know scientists. I'm your first.
Wait, I'm pretty sure if I go online right now and say, has there been any instances where scientists have been found to be corrupt, some article would come up.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like, scientists are humans at the end of the day, but as a general group, they're probably less likely to be viable than the rest of the human population.
If they can be bought, because you're saying, according to your perspective,
can priests be bought?
Well, you mean like in the modern day?
Yeah, or 2,000 years ago, even.
Bro, look at the Pope, of course.
Okay, so why couldn't Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John have been bought when they were writing their text?
Because they died for what they believed in.
How do you know? How do you know that wasn't written by somebody who was bought?
Oh, okay. I see where you're going here. It's gonna go on and on. But I'm saying, if one scientist can be bought, then all scientists can be bought. Because if you find one error in the Bible,
wait a minute. Does that apply to? If one disciple can be bought, Judas, then all disciples can be bought.
Yeah, but then the narrative says that Judas that betrayed Jesus killed himself, unalived himself.
Yeah, and maybe that's what happened to the other disciples too.
Oh, of course you would say that from your worldview.
I mean, do you have any evidence otherwise?
Do you have any other evidence to show that they betrayed Christ?
Do you have any evidence that any of the scientists were bought that provided evidence that, you know, the cave paintings in the south of France were from less than 45,000 years ago? Do you have any evidence for that, or is it just a vibe?
If I go online, I'm pretty sure I'll find some, because
you think that you'll find some evidence that that debunks the cave paintings from and I can look up their name if you want. They're really famous.
It's not just about the cave paintings, about like vaccines and all them things.
We're not talking about vaccines. So these are in the south of France, and they're super famous. They are in Kosker. I don't know how to pronounce it. Kosker Cave. Cosquer, super famous cave, and has cave paintings in it that are 36,000 or no, I'm sorry, 45,000 years ago. So like this is like something that you can scientifically provide evidence for. So like unless you have any evidence that they actually were bought and that's faked, then I don't know, bro. It seems like your argument's dead in the water. There's another one in Chauvet. God, I can't read French. Chauvet Pont d'Arc Cave in France. Those are 36,000 years old. So there are also quite old caves in Spain. I was thinking of the Lascaux cave paintings. I'm sorry. The Lascaux cave paintings are like super well preserved, and they're about 30,000 years ago.
Okay, wait, 1 sec, bro. 1 sec. I just went to ChatGPT, yeah.
I don't care about ChatGPT.
I asked for instances which scientists have been proven to be corrupt, and it said there have been numerous instances.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So
do you have evidence that last? Okay, and so can Jesus's disciples. So unless you have evidence,
where's your evidence for that though? Where's your evidence?
Judas was bought.
Yeah, and we recorded that in the book.
Yeah.
You only know that because we told you.
Right. So that's evidence that Jesus's disciples can be bought, which means that we can't trust any of them.
And I give you evidence that scientists can be whores. They can sell themselves.
So to be clear, if it's sufficient for one or several scientists, if it's sufficient to have historical records of one or several scientists being bought, being corrupt, and that is enough to indict the entire scientific process, then by that same line of reasoning, it is sufficient for evidence of one Christian disciple, Judas, to have to be bought or to be corrupt, and that should be sufficient evidence that it is possible that all disciples were corrupt, and that should indict all of Christianity.
That don't make sense. You know why that don't make sense? Because in the Old Testament, Israel betrayed God several times. A lot of the prophets in the days of old betrayed God.
This seems completely irrelevant.
No, it is, because betrayal is a constant theme in the Bible.
Yeah. Okay. So so we can't trust any of the disciples, right?
No. Because wherever there was betrayal, it was
Awumbo, this is a good point. What % of scientists do you think are bought?
I mean, I don't know. I can't answer that.
Do you think it's like 50%?
Let me ask ChatGPT and I'll come back to you about that.
I'm good. I don't want to talk to ChatGPT. I'd rather talk to a person.
Yeah, but I'm saying I could get you the information you're asking for.
I was asking for your personal opinion, to be honest. Like, I'm good. I don't need to have a conversation with ChatGPT. I can have a conversation with ChatGPT myself if I wanted to. All right, let's move on to another guest. By the way, we have some super chats to go over. From Fears Interaction. Hi, Dr. Blitz. I'm relatively new here. Would you mind briefly sharing your history with religion, why you produce atheist content, loving your lives? Wish you streamed later today. Yeah, so I was raised Jewish, but I've never believed in God as far back as I can remember. I've always considered myself, an atheist. At least since I've known what that term means. The reason I produce atheist content today is because it's, in some sense, it's a very important question. In another sense, I think that generally the strand of Christianity that we see today, at least in the West, is pretty harmful. And so it's kind of a bummer when there's a lot of that. So I think it's important to fight back. And on the third hand, like, it's just fun to exercise it, right? Like, it's just fun to do. Wish you stream later in the day. I will be streaming later in the day, starting in the beginning of June. From Garba Gaiman, 5 Canuck bucks. God stole from Job and murdered his innocent family. Returning stuff after doesn't take away the original theft and murder. That's a good point. And Garba Gaiman again with the 5 Canadian dollars. You could say that as an internal critique of Christianity, God acts in ways that a Christian would define as objectively evil. That's true. And somebody mentioned in the comments on TikTok, why didn't I go to Jubilee? A, I wasn't invited. B, I probably wouldn't have been able to go anyway because they don't pay for flights, and I'm in Europe. We have yeah, it's Justin. It's Justin's fault that we call him Garba Gaiman. Yeah, praise Doug indeed. All right, let's bring up another guest. All right, let's bring up Preston.
Oh, hey, Dr. Blitz. Sorry, I didn't mean to request.
You're good.
Well, I meant to request to talk
but
about
you're
my
not
ChatGPT
opposition,
is
are
awful
you?
to that guy. No, I'm
okay.
not.
All right. Well, thanks for being here,
Thanks.
bud. Look, honestly, I don't think I could have done better than Danny. And Ian and Parker both had like very good performances as well. I don't think I could have done it like. I mean, I would have been. It would have been different. I don't think I could have like way outshined any of them, to be honest. I mean, especially Danny. Like, I'm glad Danny was on there. Danny's gonna go super viral. I just hope he remembers me when he's famous. Like, Parker's already viral, and unfortunately, Ian's argument was too complicated to go viral. But like, Danny's clip has like over 10 million views on Twitter, and so like, I'm just proud to call him my friend, right? Yeah, that was awesome. I love that little guy. I would bet that Jordan Peterson cried after that. All right, this person's not coming on. What's Danny's TikTok? It's Danny Phil Talk. All right, let's talk to Alex again. Yeah, Ian's argument was really good. Ian got led down the rabbit hole in a way that I think was probably just a stress mistake. But also, Ian's argument was, it was academically quite sound. It was just too complicated, I think, to be clipped well. It is so funny that Jubilee changed the title. Like, that's wildly, especially because the top comment is them changing the title. All right, our TikTok interlocutors are not connecting, so I'm gonna bring up Dirtworm. How's it going? Dirtworm, can you hear me?
Oh, hello. Can you hear me? Hello?
Oh, I can't hear you. One sec. This is on my end. You're definitely talking, but I can't hear you. Oh, that's so annoying. One sec.
Hello? Okay.
All right. I think I can hear you just fine. How are you doing?
All right. Can you hear me?
I can. What god do you believe in?
Awesome. Good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right.
Good. So this is interesting. I was just scrolling by and I was listening to that last kind of debate conversation you were having with that guy, and like, I just it reminded me of so many arguments and debates I've had, especially when I was like a teenager, first getting into, leaving Christianity, becoming an atheist, and then having my own spiritual experiences, coming back and figuring out like what my beliefs are. It's just anyway. So, can you convince me to believe in your God? I guess I'll kind of say what my God is, I guess, first.
That'd be helpful.
That definition. So, I really like this one description I heard, like, as an acronym, like GOD, generate, order, and destroy. Like, I view God as like the general force in the universe that does just that. Like, it generates stuff, we got here somehow. It orders that energy, that stuff, into forms, and then it destroys that stuff, entropy, and then out of that chaos, it just goes back into a cycle and it generates more shit.
So would your view of God be compatible with my view of the universe?
Could you briefly explain your view, possibly?
Yeah, that there's a universe and that universe has stuff in it, and that stuff has natural properties that do things. Like, electrons are attracted to protons. Stars, they form from collapsing clouds of dust and then they explode violently at the end of their lives. These kinds of things. Is your view compatible with that view, that that's all there is?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. But I guess my specific thing is that I think that what that stuff is not just matter. And I think that's my main thing.
What else is
I'm
it?
Wondering. I think what it is fundamentally is consciousness.
So you think that, like, electrons have consciousness?
Not just that they have consciousness, but that they literally are consciousness.
Well, I don't know what that means at all.
So let me explain. So so most people, my understanding of what a lot of atheists and scientific-minded people think is like the Big Bang or whatever creation thing happened and all this stuff got here, right? And it's all material, right?
Continue.
I think you cut off.
No, I didn't cut off.
No,
I was just waiting for you to continue.
Okay. So anyway, so that's what I think a lot of people think is like consciousness kind of came out of matter. Like,
yeah, sure.
There was just a rock here, and then there was the single-celled organism, and then it split and then became more and more complex, more and more conscious. But I think it's the opposite. I think spirit, consciousness, descended into matter.
Like, so matter predates spirit descending into matter?
So I think they're both simultaneously like one and the same. Like the Big Bang was an event that was like consciousness becoming reality, creating reality, like as one. Not like a painter creates a painting and then at the end of the process they are two separate things. No, I'm saying it is one thing that creates itself.
So look, all I have to ask is, what does this worldview of attaching consciousness to everything explain that my worldview can't?
Okay, I think it's the so the way I view this is sort of like left brain like left brain right brain kind of stuff. Like,
well, look, so if we're comparing worldviews, then it's important to just evaluate those worldviews on different features. So one of the ways that we evaluate worldviews is with simplicity, which worldview has the fewest assumptions, for example. Another way that we evaluate worldviews is by explanatory power, which worldview is able to most effectively explain the observations of the world around us. So that's what I'm asking you. What can your worldview explain that mine cannot?
So I think there's a lot of phenomena that a lot of atheists, at least that I've talked to, they say they're unexplainable at this point, or like they don't agree with the explanation of like consciousness and God stuff, like things that are, some would say magical or, spiritual, telepathy and stuff like that, like stuff that science doesn't.
How does your worldview explain telepathy?
Well, okay, so
supposing for a moment that exists, so how does your worldview explain telepathy?
Okay, so if everything is consciousness, and I think I think like quantum physics sort of ties into this.
Oh my god, okay, they've hit the first building.
Just to preface this, I don't know.
They've hit the first tower.
Okay, anyway, I'll forget about quantum physics. Never mind.
Thank you.
Just consciousness, everything is connected that way because it came from that one source.
But now you're adding an additional feature. Not only is it that consciousness is everything, but that consciousness, even after it separates itself into the different pieces.
Okay, here's the thing. I never said it separated itself.
Well, I mean, presumably, the consciousness in me is different from the consciousness in you, right?
Okay, here's an analogy for how I explain that. Like,
sure, go ahead.
An apple, like an apple tree. So like, if an apple is still a fruit on the tree, it hasn't been picked yet. It's still an apple separate from the tree, but also it's connected to the tree, so it's still kind of part of the tree. You know what I'm saying? Like, the root is a part of the tree, the trunk is a part of the tree, the leaf is a part of the tree. They're all different, but they're still part of the one thing. That's what I'm saying.
So look, I mean, so you can have an explanation of this telepathy, and I could give you an explanation. Human brains are quantum entangled with other human brains, and this is just a purely naturalistic material phenomenon.
The only thing I would disagree there is that it's material and conscious.
Well, but my point is it doesn't seem like it's at least plausible that my worldview could explain that. So
yeah,
where's the explanatory power of your worldview?
Well, okay, you got me there. I guess I didn't. Okay, so here's a question: do you believe in telepathy? Do you think that's a real thing?
I'm skeptical. Like I'm not like 100% like dogmatically against it, because, you know, there could be things that we just don't understand very well. But I'm very skeptical of these claims.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so I guess I'm kind of projecting a little bit of what I think an atheist is, now that I think about it. So could you like explain a little bit more of like kind of your specific beliefs of like what makes you an atheist? What makes you think there's no God? Like, how do you define God?
So I typically define God as a being that is in some sense responsible for the universe. I think of it as a being with a mind. That's generally basically it. Usually we should usually it should not itself be subject to some set of physical rules as well.
Not subject to physical rules.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So like I wouldn't call it a god if there was just like an alien that could control the universe. If it was like born and then could get sick, right?
Okay,
that would be kind of weird.
Because to me, a god would be all encompassing. It would include the physical.
That's just not what most people mean when they say God. That's all.
Interesting. Well, I would disagree with a lot of people then, because I mean, especially
I guess
a lot of Christians. The whole point is like God.
Well, no, I mean like
was Christ. That was the whole.
Yeah. But the reason why he had human form was because he incarnated. He descended from his divine form.
Yes, like I was saying, like consciousness descends into matter. But like it never leaves. It's like they're still connected.
I mean, I think if you asked a Christian if God could get sick, they'd probably say no.
If he was in human form like Christ, I'm sure Christ as a human, if he existed that way, I'm sure his body got sick every once in a while.
I mean, maybe. In which case we can drop the not subject to physical rules. Although arguably, in the case of Jesus Christ, it would have been his choice to get sick, right? He could have just chosen not to. And so it's not that he was subject to, it's not like he got sick against his will. He just got sick because he wanted to experience the suffering of humans or something, right?
I guess that would be kind of how they would explain it. I've always struggled and thought about that. It was so weird, especially as a kid growing up in the church.
I agree. It's weird.
Why was this guy perfect and everyone else is not?
Because that's the story. That's the story we tell. But Dirtworm, anyway. Since we're really not talking about the same class of things, I am going to let you go. Is that okay?
That's cool, man. I was just really interested in talking with you about this.
Yeah, of course.
I didn't feel like I disagree that much. I just have kind of a different...
That's fair.
I don't know. It was a fun conversation. And very, very entertaining to hear that last conversation with that guy. Oh my god, dude. I wanted to scream at him so much. Like,
hey now. I
mean,
we give grace here. We give grace. All right, Dirtworm, I'm going to let you go.
All right,
but thanks for being here, bud.
Good one.
Take care. Yeah, we give grace unless they're like neo-Nazis, then we don't give grace. I am not strong. I do not have big arms, but I am totally okay to verbally abuse neo-Nazis. Physically abuse would be a bad idea. I'd get beat up. But verbal abuse, totally fine. All right, let's bring up a guest from a TikTok. All right, let's bring up 9. God, my computer is so slow. I cannot. I'm getting rid of this computer in 3 days. Yes, I can hear you okay. 9, how are you?
Okay. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. What God do you believe in?
Religion itself would be like Manichaeism, if you understand that one.
I have never heard of that. Can you describe the God for you? The God that you believe in?
The easier way, it's similar to like Jediism, if you understand that one.
Well, as far as I understand it, Jediism is like a meme and not like an actual belief position.
Okay, that one, yeah, because it's like that one's kind of like a joke religion. I understand your point. But if you like kind of like the good force and the dark side and the stuff like that and stuff.
Okay, but what is the God that you believe in?
It's a dualistic religion.
But
like
do you believe in a God?
A personified concept of a God, yes.
Do you believe that there is a mind or a being with a mind that created the universe?
Possibly. I can't really explain what consciousness is, so it's possible.
But you don't believe it?
It possibly is true, but I do believe in the concept of it possibly happening. That makes sense.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't actually. That is baffling and confusing. I don't know what it means to possibly believe in something. You just kind of do or you don't. Sorry, nothing against you, 9. It just didn't seem like it was going to be a useful or productive conversation. All right. I don't know why my TikTok is being so slow. Blurp, blurp. By the way, if you guys like what you're seeing, consider supporting the live. You can like the live, you can share the live, you can subscribe, you can follow along. All of these good ways to support the live. You can also, if you wish, give me some of your hard-earned money. Now, of course, there is no requirement that you give me any of your money, but it does make me happy, and it means that I can spend more money on a better computer when I move back to the States, which I will be doing soon, on a better camera, etc. So these are all things that will... Because as it stands right now, this is my only source of income. So, you know, these are things that will help me improve the live.
How are you, Dr. Blitz?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good, mostly good. Yeah.
Nice to hear. What God do you believe in?
Oh, I actually just have a question for you.
Sure.
I actually, I agree with your position, but I caught for a second. You were talking about the interview with Jordan Peterson and Ian. I watched that video, but who was the other?
Parker. Danny. You're talking about Danny, the guy at the beginning?
Yeah, the guy that you said was just phenomenal. I want to check that out.
Danny's he's a character and he's a buddy of mine.
You said Danny?
Yeah, his account name on TikTok is Danny Philtalk, PHIL, and then talk as in TALK.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to check that out because I follow Ian and you as well.
Oh, Danny's live right now?
No, I'm
shit.
not sure.
No, somebody's saying that he's live right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to watch that video and
Yeah,
and
you
check it
so
out.
so I would say everybody go watch Danny, but look, I need the views too. I need the ego trip as well. But after my live, if he's still on, we'll go over there.
Yeah. No, and I think it would be interesting to have you on there, and if you were to talk to Jordan Peterson.
Oh yeah, no, but I probably wouldn't have done better than Danny. Danny, this was legendary, right? So
he kind of covered all points.
Yeah. Like they did great. Like, I'm glad that they went. Obviously, I would have liked to have gone if I could have, but I'm not mad about it. Anyway, I'm gonna let you go because I should bring on a guest. But thanks for being here, John.
Danny Tiki Talk, you said?
It's Phil Talk, like philosophy, the first 4 letters of philosophy.
Danny Phil Talk. All right.
And then he likes to talk about it. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Look, Danny is far more educated than me when it comes to everything philosophy. Far more educated, far more familiar with the whole field. And also, he's been doing debates for a long time, and his style of rhetoric is like, I don't know if it's effective, but it's hilarious, and it's so fun to watch. It's so fun to watch. So I would never, ever say anything bad about Danny. From Colin Stalker, £5. Keep doing what you do. Here's £5 for a new computer. I appreciate you. Yeah, no, the one thing that I have going for me is that I'm the only medium to large size debate lord that has a science background. I mean, on TikTok anyway. All right, let's bring up Casey from the D. 99.5 Casey from the D. Ben Yehudis with the $10 on Buy Me a Coffee. I appreciate you. I appreciate you, Ben. No, I don't have a Venmo. At least not I don't have a public-facing Venmo yet. I have a personal Venmo that I use for things, but I'm going to set up a public-facing one when I move back to the States in 5 days. From Tucson KEG with the $6.66. May Doug bless you with a new computer soon. Yeah, no, that is the plan. This person's not connecting. I will be getting I'll have to get a computer. I'm selling my current one. So I will have to get a new one. What made me move back to the States? It was a choice. It was a personal choice that I don't need to explain. But my contract in Europe ended, so I could either stay here or I could go somewhere else. All right, let's bring up Uncle Luke from YouTube. Uncle Luke, can you hear me?
Hey, I can hear you just fine, man. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So what God do you believe in?
Hey, man, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Are you Jewish?
No, I'm Christian, man.
Okay, well, but that you understand that you saying the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is vague, right?
Yeah. No, I get what he was saying. I'm just definitely identifying a source. That's all.
Okay, sure. So, what would you say is like the most compelling reason you could give me that I should believe in the God that you believe in?
If it was for myself, and just like you're an atheist, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And atheism for you, what does that mean? Just like so I can kind of respect that.
Yeah. I just don't believe that there exists a divine creator.
Okay, so like nothing outside of like material reality. So like all the mechanisms of cause and effect are contained within like this reality, physical material, right?
Well, so I suspect as much. But being an atheist doesn't preclude that. Like you can have atheist Platonists. These are people who think that like abstract objects and like even abstract notions such as moral goods and things exist in some sort of abstract realm, but that's still an atheist position, right?
Fair enough. And is that where you sit though? I'm like, because if I'm gonna make a convincing
generally no. Okay. But like, and like I have problems with Platonism, but like that is a live option for some atheists, just perhaps not for me.
No, I see that. Okay. So like the one where you kind of take more part in is and like, dude, definitely correct me if I'm wrong, is like the side where it's like, is it measurable? Is it provable? can it be explained within existing literature that has like support from nature, observation, and like modern computers that can do measurements and stuff like that, right?
So my position is generally that we should let our science guide metaphysics rather than the other way around. So like,
Okay.
Surely there are things that we can't explain yet. Perhaps we will never be able to explain. But I don't think that that necessarily means that there must be some supernatural explanation. So this is just to say that you could call me a naturalist, you could call me a physicalist of some kind. Yeah.
I respect that. All right. The reason why I asked that is like for me also, that was my point of view. Like where you are at, I was there before. I know I had to go through some personal crap too. I'm not gonna lie. Not precluding that you haven't gone through personal crap. Just me personally. But so I actually really understand your position really well, and that's where I was at. And I still am to this day. I'm a big, there has to be some sort of thing, something else besides a book and some dude who wrote it that I never met in my life, that I'm separated by language, culture, time, distance, everything. Like that to me is absurd, you know? Um, Up until the point, I started like looking, I became aware of a lot of the archaeological proof for what the biblical text is saying. And then I began to really listen to people, and I started to hear that we all share the same narrative, but we use different words. Um, I still hold that,
Damn it, I was
Jesus
muted.
Christ.
When you say archaeological proof, what do you mean?
Yeah. When it comes to like the biblical literature, and you have a Jewish background, right?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, this is awesome. So like you're uniquely positioned to really like participate in this conversation. Oh, this is awesome.
I would
Okay.
hope so.
Yeah, right. But yeah, dude. So, and anything down to like the locations that were written down are real locations proven by archaeology. We have excavation sites, we have cultural sites. In regards to other literature that's outside of the Bible, which I believe is vitally important considering we're talking about history, there's other nations, countries, empires that write about the Jewish people, some of the areas kind of verifying some of the locations in that literature. We have anywhere from Tacitus to Josephus, um, even ancient, how do I say, scrolls from Babylonia,
So
Syria.
I agree that there are a lot of
Yeah.
place names and a lot of people groups that are mentioned in the Hebrew Bible and in the Christian version of the Bible, the Christian Bible. There are a lot of place names, people groups that actually existed. But the point in contention for like the archaeological, like when we say archaeological evidence for the Bible, what we really mean is archaeological evidence for like miracles, right? Or for like the things that shouldn't, the things that are kind of out of the ordinary. If you have an ancient text that mentions real places, that doesn't mean that everything that happened in the ancient text is true.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, for that you need something like eyewitnesses and other historical writings to kind of give you some sort of confirmation that'll at least give you a
Or
high
archaeological
percentage
evidence,
of
right?
it.
Like
Yeah.
as an example,
Like give me proof that someone came from the dead 3,000 years later is kind of hard to do. Like I absolutely I agree with
well,
you.
but maybe not. I mean, like just as an example, are you familiar with the Iliad, Homer's Iliad?
Yeah, dude, great literature.
Right. So for a long time, the during the Renaissance and during the what was it called? The Enlightenment era, people revered Homer, right? Homer was revered amongst the intellectual elite of the of Europe. But for a long time, they essentially thought that everything in that story was a myth. Everything was made up. And what that means is they thought that Troy didn't exist. They thought that Agamemnon didn't exist. They thought that Menelaus didn't exist. They thought that the battles didn't exist. They thought that none of that existed. And then in the mid-1850s, if I remember correctly, some German dude was digging around in what I think is modern-day Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, and he found Troy. He found a city where Troy was supposed to be. Now, that's great. That's a huge discovery. But does it mean that Athena joined the Greeks on the battlefield? Well, no. Kind of obviously not, right? But
Yeah, I agree.
if Athena did join the Greeks on the battlefield, you would kind of expect to like see the remnants of that, right? Like with these kinds of miraculous things, you would expect to see the remnants of that somehow. But of course we don't. So we just kind of assume that like in the absence of really good evidence, we just assume that there just isn't, that the thing just didn't happen. And so as an example, to connect this with the Bible, in the Bible it says that there was a giant earthquake in Jerusalem, if I remember correctly. And then the patriarchs, the dead people of Israel, or of the Israelites, I should say, rose from the dead and wandered around the city of Jerusalem, right? Now, if that were true, we would expect to see more than just one text writing about it. Because you would have had a whole bunch of random Jewish people also writing about why are there zombies walking around on the streets, right? And so the fact that we don't see records of that, despite Jerusalem being a place that actually exists, makes me think that the story just didn't happen.
That is a good point. So there has to be something that kind of gives the supernatural connection to man that is provable and observable.
Or at least gives us good reason to think it happened, right? I mean, so let me give you an example of something that's not related to Christianity. So Muslims, in the Quran, there's a verse where it says that Muhammad split the moon in two as part of a miracle to demonstrate to unbelievers that he really was speaking for God, right? This is a thing that Muslims generally believe. But one of the reasons why you and I both know that that didn't actually happen is because we can go look at like the Chinese who recorded everything that happened in the sky, and they didn't write down that the moon was split in two. And so they wrote down everything else that happened in the sky. So the fact that they didn't write down that the moon was split in two is evidence that it just didn't happen. In the same way, the ancient Hebrews, I guess they were Jews at the time, around the time of Jesus, were recording a lot of things. There was active religious debate all the time. This was when the Talmud was first being codified. So these were people that were writing down events that were taking place, arguments that were happening. And so if suddenly an earthquake appeared and then the dead walked around the streets of Jerusalem, you'd think that people would have written about it beyond just one guy 100 years later or 70 years later.
And I see your point is actually correct. It is hard to say something, certain things written down in literature have weight if there's little to no cross-examination across other societies, and that's one of the things there I agree with in literature, that in the scripture that is beyond verification, I guess, for at least a distance in time we're in, you know. Not to say that there could have been, and then they probably were destroyed, just like a lot of the common knowledge around abouts where Troy was kind of disappeared as time went on, and then we just later figured it out. I believe the incident you're talking about happened in the 30s. I think that was like right as Hitler was coming up.
Was it?
In Germany?
I thought it was the 20th century, but then I reread it. I can look it up. Not that it's relevant. I'm just curious.
It isn't, but it's awesome.
Okay, so
I love that story though. I really
it was
do.
1871 by Heinrich Schliemann.
1870.
Yep,
bro, I love that story though.
It's a really cool story. I agree.
Yeah, because at the time they thought it was just a myth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things with that when it comes to the Bible that I think are worth taking a look. Even though that is one of them, that is not necessarily the most verifiable now with the distance in time, but also, in regards to the historical life of Christ, what the Old Testament says about him, and a lot of things being verified scientifically that have been written in the Old Testament and the New Testament in regards to human behavior, how to deal with one another, a lot of psychology, biology, even down to what's it called, sanitation methods. But
Would you say that
Jewish people?
Would you say that the Bible is a scientific book?
You know what? The first reading I ever did of the Bible, I was so shocked when I was reading Genesis, and I'm like, there are deep psychological implications written throughout the Bible that is so ahead of its time that we don't even know. Even the concept of generosity, the concept of giving away money makes you more money. And even now, scientists are just discovering that.
What, how is
in
that?
data.
Wait, hold on. We could talk about this, but like,
Yeah,
what does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean for scientists to discover that? That's not like a fact of the world that is like discoverable through experimentation, right?
You know, you're
That's
the
like
scientist, and I have met other scientists too. By the way, I had the privilege.
Good,
of
good. I'm glad.
AI,
I'm glad I'm
yeah,
not your first.
No, you're not. I had the privilege of touring an AI laboratory at the USF here in Florida, which is where I live.
Sure.
And asking questions about AI, the way they create it, how it's done, and it's just amazing. But no, definitely not. There's definitely a method. If I would imagine a scientist would figure out a method to test something, I believe.
Well, no, I think that the statement that giving away money makes you more money, I don't even think that's true, by the way. Like,
Yeah,
it's factually false. If what you're saying is that generosity makes you happier, then I would probably agree with that, yeah. But that's like a feature of the human condition that I suspect has been known since before Jesus existed.
I understand. Yeah, and I believe there was a Harvard professor that was speaking on this. So definitely, if you could look that up, I'm not really looking at my computer right now.
That's fine.
But,
yeah, I can look it up. What should I look up?
Yeah, let's see here. Hold on.
Harvard professor.
Harvard professor, and I'd say giving and increase income. There's like a correlation between Arthur Brooks.
Okay, so hold on. This is from Instagram. Let's actually read.
Yeah, definitely don't click Instagram, bro. The gram will drag you down.
Well, yeah, and I generally don't believe Instagram as a source of wealth or a source of information. Anyway, so he's an economist. I don't want to look on Sarah and George Substack. Okay, let's see something. So, okay, so I just found an article on this. Yeah. So, the more you give, the more you get. It sounds like something your father might say, but according to economist Arthur C. Brooks and some fascinating new research, it's actually true. Yes, giving to charity can make you richer, not just in a feel-good way, but in actual dollars. The common assumption is that you need to be rich to give. After all, you can't donate when you don't have. But Arthur C. Brooks turns that idea on its head. He points out that while people who earn more do give more, the opposite is also true. People who give more often end up earning more. Research from the Social Capital Community Benchmark Survey shows that this connection between giving and earning is more than one way. In fact, if you give just $100 more than your neighbor this year, you might see as much as an extra $375 in your income next year. That's a 275% return on investment, blah, 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 blah. 2009 study found that charitable giving leads to higher income. For every dollar you give to charity, you can expect to make approximately $3.75 in return on average. This aligns with Arthur C. Brooks' research, reinforcing that generosity has measurable financial benefits. So then the question is how does it work? Well, they say that when you give, neuroscientists say that when you give, your brain activates regions associated with rewards and pleasure. Basically, your brain gets a little dopamine hit. Studies show that generous people are 43% more likely to say they're very happy. And then, I guess, presumably happiness leads to higher levels of, financial success or something. I'm a little bit skeptical of it, but suppose that we grant it's true, then
may I give you personal testimony or something?
No,
real life.
Personal testimony is irrelevant for this kind of examination of data, right?
Okay, fair enough. It's just not myself, actually.
But my point is supposing that this is true, what does this have to do with the Bible?
Tithing and that practice has existed.
But does it say anywhere in the Bible that? Does it say anywhere in the Bible that giving is how if you give a certain amount of money, then you'll get back more money in return? Does it say that anywhere?
Let me do a source search right now for you.
Okay.
But in regards to the experience, and because personally, if there's something molecular happening, it's going to show. And I think that applies to everything in reality, right? From the small to the large.
I don't know what you mean by it's going to show.
The little things can have a big impact. What
Oh,
I'm
well,
saying
yeah,
is
sure.
that
Yeah, I mean,
with
feel-good
that
chemicals
article
are
and the
pretty
statement-
strong.
Yeah, and with that statement, you will look to see, well, are there people that are saying the same thing? Right? And yes, I know people at churches that do give 10% of their income. And
Well,
those
right. But is that in the Bible? Right? Is this business of if you give, then you shall get even more. If you give money, then you shall get even more money. Is that in the Bible somewhere?
Yeah, let me look it up.
Okay.
Yep. Oh yes. It just came to mind. It came to mind. I'm typing to make sure I find it, but hold on. There is a parable in regards to the sowing. The parable of the sower. Hold on. That's Numbers. Okay. Give, and it shall be given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. That's Luke 6:38. Generosity, that's principle. Hold on. Whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. God loves a cheerful giver. 2 Corinthians 9:6-8. Acts 4:32-35. Oh, that's just an explanation. My apologies.
I was muted. So I will absolutely grant you that, yeah, it says if you give, then you will get. Absolutely, sure. Now, so is it your view that the Bible is a scientific book? That we should look to it for scientific truths?
Yeah, may I add that we have a Harvard professor that just
said,
Harvard.
I'm happy to grant that this is. I'm happy to grant that this phenomenon is true for the sake of argument. I'm happy to grant that people who tend to give more are people who tend to do better financially in the future. I'm happy to grant that.
I'm not using this as the all be all. I promise you. I really.
Are you making the claim that we should look towards the Bible for scientific truth?
I think that there are elements that, as we just verified on air before witnesses, that if we trace science back to literature,
can you answer my question?
Within proper context, that yes, there are truths to be discovered, just like
okay.
the one we did.
So would you?
One of the truths that's already been there for thousands of
years. So would you say that this example of a scientific truth found in the Bible is evidence that the Bible makes true claims?
Yes, I believe
that
this is evidence that there are truth claims that are made in the Bible.
Would you say that cases where the Bible makes false scientific claims is evidence against the Bible making truth claims? Or making true claims?
That's a very good argument. I'm going to give it to you. That's a good one.
So, I mean, we could either just dismiss all of the scientific claims of the Bible entirely and say, well, it's not a science book, so we shouldn't look to it for scientific claims one way or the other. And so if it says something wrong about science, whatever, it's not a science book. But that means that we then can't use the things that it gets right about science in its favor. So you can't really have it both ways.
Yeah. No, and this is definitely something that is interesting when observing. So, for example, I would be amiss to say that we should go to the Bible for scientific proof. It is absolutely outside of scientific, the whole science thing. That's just not proper.
Yeah, it's not a science book.
When examining literature.
It's a lot of it's mythological history. A lot of it is metaphor. A lot of it is poetry. A lot of it is kind of national storytelling. But nowhere in the Bible is it really trying to be a scientific text, except perhaps Genesis 1.
Yes. Now,
but Genesis 1 gets it wrong, so we should probably not assume that it's trying to be a science thing there.
Well, I believe one of the interesting things I learned about Genesis is that the order of creation matches exactly the order of the elements that were created in the Big Bang. So heavier, lighter elements first, moving to the heavier elements, The
So
subatomic
there were only
particles
3
that
elements
make up
created.
material.
I think that there's trace beryllium. So there were only 4 elements that were created during Big Bang nucleosynthesis, and there's 6 days. So it can't be that they match.
So depends on how time is measured in a finite scale.
No, I'm just talking about
mechanic-
the ordering, right? Because the ordering goes hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium. And you could maybe line up like the first day was hydrogen, and that's like there's light, and light powers, or hydrogen powers the lights of our stars, so blah 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 blah, fine. And then the second day is helium, and helium, and the second day was, I don't remember, it was like separating the heavens above from the waters below or whatever, and the heavens were floating, and so that's like helium. And then you could say that the third day is lithium, but then you'd run out of days by day 4, so it can't really line up, right? Where'd he go? I didn't kick him. He just left. Sorry, I'm smacking into the mic. I don't mean to, and I have a mic covered. Oh, he's back. Okay, cool.
Hey, can you hear me? What
Yeah,
the
I
heck
can hear you.
happened?
Welcome back.
Sorry, I think my phone went dark, bro.
You're good. Yeah, so with regards to like the helium, like the hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium business, how does that line up with the Genesis 1?
Yeah. So I wasn't saying that each element was created in a day.
I'm not making. I wasn't saying that
Yeah,
you were saying
I
that.
just
I'm
wanna make
saying
sure
that I know
case
you're
I
saying that the
misunderstood.
ordering, but how does that line up? How does the ordering line up?
Yeah. So the first day, light and day. So light before solid matter. After the Big Bang, protons were dominated before matter was formed. So the first day.
Protons are a
Second-
type of matter, though.
Exactly. The
So
second day.
what do you
is
mean
light.
protons dominated before matter was formed? I don't follow. I don't know what you mean by that.
Yeah. So in regards to like heavy elements, we all know even like the sun during the process of its burning, it burns through the lighter elements first, and the
Yep.
heavier elements kind of and it's the same way for the universe.
So how does
originally in the universe,
how do
was in a
protons have to
highly-
do with the first day? I don't follow.
Yeah. So the order of sequencing. So the first day is light. God
Yeah.
said, "Let there be light." If we go back and compare the scientific literature, that matches what happened. The Big Bang. After the Big Bang, photons were really dominant. Okay, so there's a match there. What about the second day, sky and sea? We have.
Well,
Earth
but
was
photons
indeed
photons
covered in
didn't
water.
photons weren't the first thing, right?
What was the first thing?
Well, we don't know what the first thing was, but like B bosons predated photons, for example.
And may we be honest to say here that in the way time was measured, then that probably would have been. I don't know how condensed time is measured. I don't think there's a science for that yet. So, like, which element came first here? We're probably dealing with like.
Well,
numbers
light
that are
isn't
so small.
light isn't an element, right? So if we're talking about elements, the first one is hydrogen.
Yeah, this is where it gets mind-boggling because I would imagine its elements are needed to create light or just exchange of energy, which is a form of matter. So that's where it gets murky for me. 'Cause
So
I'm not a scientist.
elements are atoms, right? Elements are are different types of atoms, and I mean, like in some sense, like the first atoms didn't really form until 380,000 years after the Big Bang. But the first neutral atoms, I should say. But you could talk about like the nuclei of atoms forming, and in which case the first nucleus, the first atomic nucleus, was the proton, and the proton formed about 1 second after the Big Bang. But there were photons before that, and there were B bosons before that, and there were quarks before that as well.
Okay, understood.
So like
And I
light
see what
wasn't
you're
the first thing, but it also isn't an element.
Hello, are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear
my
me?
apologies. Okay,
You're
went
fine.
quiet.
So this is all
and-
to say, like, it doesn't seem like Like the claim, let there be light, that was the first thing. Well, light wasn't the first thing. It just didn't exist first. So it seems like they got the order wrong.
I see. Definitely when applying that, it doesn't apply. So I made a failed argument there.
But again, we shouldn't treat the Bible as a scientific book, because if you do, then you have to run into all the times when it gets science wrong.
Yeah.
So anybody who takes
you're
Genesis
absolutely
1, and anyone who takes Genesis 1 seriously as like informing us about scientific truths of the world, they're gravely mistaken. Like they're just making a category error in my view.
No, that is, I agree with that statement. I
So-
absolutely agree with that statement.
so then-
and that explains a flawed argument that I made. Absolutely. You're
So
right.
I think an important question then is, like, look, we can interpret the Bible as, I mean, clearly, I don't know, what's your view on like when the Hebrew Bible was written?
Dang. I'm the type that will say that thing was probably verbally passed down way before it was written. And the argument
okay,
for
that's-
written, I think, is like, it's an argument, but it's this baby's old. I mean, it
Yeah,
goes
so-
back to like flood days before like written language.
So the latest, so the Hebrew Bible was rough, like the Torah, the 5 books, were roughly codified like 2,500 years ago. Some of the stories we know date back to perhaps 2,800 years ago to maybe 3,000 years ago. Very hard to say about anything that predates that. But why was I talking? Why did I bring this up? There was a reason. I brought this up for a reason.
We were talking about text, contextualization, the Big Bang, science, and then you went into the Bible.
I had a whole point. I had a whole point here, but my brain just
I'm trying
farted.
to
So
help you get there, bro.
I know you are. I appreciate it. My
We're in
brain
this
just
together, man.
my brain just died and it won't resurrect for another 3 days.
Oh,
yeah.
dude, I see what you did there.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. Yeah, so suffice it to say, we have these texts that are fairly old. But the question is why should we take them seriously as a recounting of the events as described in them if we can't take them seriously in all their respects?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's like an argument to say, you know, it's almost like the boy who cried wolf. If it's like not completely true, then why should we believe you? Type of argument. Am I correct in interpreting
It's something
what you
like
said?
that. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
look, so in the same, or nearly in the same book as the Exodus takes place. So one book earlier, so the Exodus takes place in Exodus, right? And the book before that is Genesis. We have stories of people
I
who
would
lived
imagine.
900 years, right? And like that's obviously not a thing that happened. Nobody lived 900 years. Because like that, it's funny that like the only time this is happening is when we don't have good records of like birthdays and death days, right? So like
Yes.
why should we take seriously the Exodus? And if the Exodus didn't happen, then why should we take seriously any of the events in Sinai? And if the if the reception of the law by Moses in the desert for 40 years didn't happen, then what does any of the New Testament story, what does any of that have to do with anything? So like it just seems like it seems like once you start to pick apart the early bits, when you start to question, did these things really happen? That means that the later bits fall apart.
No, I see what you mean. And if it doesn't completely follow through. And this is where, for me, it gets kind of tricky as a Christian, because when Jesus Christ comes into the scene, he affirms the Old Testament, he affirms Moses, he affirms the things that are written. He even affirms
Like
one of
Adam.
the craziest stories. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, he affirms Adam. He even affirms the craziest one. I think you and I would definitely have a go about would be Jonah.
Yeah, that
So-
one's pretty crazy. Yup.
Yeah, that one's like, yeah, bruh. Like, but then again, it's like the things that he did
Well, the things that he allegedly did, that's the problem, right? We don't know. We don't know if we can trust those books as being like an accurate representation of what happened, because they're citing things that seem to not be accurate representations of what happened.
Well, I love that you said that. The only thing is like the way the society around Jesus behaved within the context of their time, and we're talking about the leadership and the way they reacted, and in regards to the gospels themselves, right? There are differences in them, and they were written by different people, but there are also around that time lots of external verifiable sources that mention Jesus Christ,
Well, I think
mentions
there's like
the people's
two,
love
right?
for him.
There's like two,
There's
right?
Josephus, Tacitus,
Josephus and Tacitus, if I remember correctly.
and then there has to be others, man. And then we can't also ignore the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
So to be clear, we could absolutely say that Jesus existed. The question is if what they're saying about Jesus is true. Now, by the way, it is absolutely totally possible that the Jewish authorities at the time were just not interested in having a guy who was claiming to be God running around their city, right? Totally possible. And arguably, I think you would agree, super reasonable, right? Like if you don't think that this guy's
claiming to be God. Yeah, claiming to be God, and like
or even the son of God, that's pretty extreme, right?
Yeah.
So like you might think that the measures they took were pretty harsh. But that this was at a time when you would get stoned to death for adultery. So maybe the measures were pretty normal for the time, right? So like it just doesn't seem all that surprising that they would take those actions, even if he wasn't actually the son of God, right?
Yes, and may I add, they actually were not allowed to take those actions, which is why they had to go to the Roman Empire and have them sign off on execution, which is why it was the Romans that exercised the execution.
What do you mean they weren't allowed to?
No, actually, this is the crazy thing. So, yeah, so the Romans took over that area, Judea, before it was under Jewish control. So that we have the Maccabean Revolution, right?
Well, Jewish control existed there prior to the Romans, prior to the Greeks.
Yes.
But then they got overthrown, and then they revolted, and then they got overthrown. It was a whole thing. But at the time of Jesus' life, it was the Romans. Yeah. At the time of Jesus' life, it was the Romans that controlled the area. Sure.
Bro, yeah, they put the D on the table and they just let it sit there for a while. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is, they actually had control over the executions. So it was the Jewish people were not allowed to enact the
sure
type of thing. Yeah,
sure.
So
but
they
my
had
point
to work
is,
in cahoots.
Yeah. Okay, so they worked with the local authorities. The Jewish
matches that perfectly. That is historically verifiable. That is indeed how the
and this is relevant to the conversation we had earlier. It totally makes sense that there would be historically accurate things in a story that also has mythology in it. Mm-hmm. There probably was a battle of Troy. It just probably didn't involve the goddess Athena stepping onto the battlefield herself, right? Mm-hmm. Just like how there probably was a guy named Jesus who was crucified and who was was crucified at the behest of the Jewish authorities. That's totally plausible. Yes, I'm not sure if that's. We don't actually know if that's how it happened. By the way, it could have been that he was crucified at the behest of the Romans, but we don't really have any external sources for that one way or the other. But the point is just because there's historical plausibility about some aspects of the story doesn't mean that all aspects of the story are historically plausible.
Can I add that historical event was predicted about 400 to 700 years before that happened?
Are you talking about, what is it, Isaiah?
The scriptures in Isaiah that go back to Genesis.
So Isaiah, so I'm no biblical scholar. I imagine you're not either. But my understanding is that biblical scholars tend to agree that Isaiah is referring to the nation of Israel when it talks about, suffering for their iniquity and all of these things. That's referring to the nation of Israel itself during the Babylonian exile, not having to do with the Messiah.
Bro, you're really studied. You're fun to talk to.
I appreciate
like
that.
you.
I appreciate that.
I respect you. I like you a lot. That's called the Deutero-Isaiah argument, and you're absolutely right. The thing that I have with the Deutero-Isaiah argument is it claims that the scroll of Isaiah was written in separate periods by separate people, where in actuality, we have the oldest version of Isaiah is one complete scroll, and it literally brings back the oldest version of Isaiah we have by 1,000 years.
Well, yeah, sure, but it's to like 150 BC, not to like when it was actually written. I mean, like even under the Deutero-Isaiah theory, which again is pretty mainstream if I remember correctly, the idea is that it was compiled like in 450 or 500 BC or something like that, around the time of around the time of the end of the Babylonian exile, which I guess the end of the Babylonian exile was in like 538 BC, I think. So like,
yes.
Of course,
but mind you, we have more copies of the book of Isaiah that are so close in regards to similarity than we do the Iliad, which you referenced earlier.
Well, so what I mean is that if Isaiah was finished being compiled into one full document by, say, let's just be generous and say 450 BC, then of course all of the versions that we find after 450 BC would just be one full document. Now, one of the predictions that you would make from the Deutero-Isaiah theory is that if you could find fragments of Isaiah from, say, before 500 BC, then you would expect to find them separated, not in one complete document. But if the idea is that they were joined together around 2,500 years ago, then of course, all of the versions that you would see after 2,500 years ago would be one joint document.
I follow what you're saying. That does make sense. Albeit, it does not take away the closeness in regards to the words written and the events that actually happened years later, down to the words that were spoken. We have Psalm 22 written in a different time. I think that predates Isaiah in a way, Psalm 22. And it even...
Is this the one with the... this is the one with the animal imagery, right? This is the one with the bulls, many bulls surround me, strong bulls of Bashan encircle me, roaring lions that tear their prey, open their mouths wide against me. That one?
Yes.
So dogs surround me, a pack of villains encircles me, they something, my hands and my feet, all my bones are on display. That one, yeah?
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, there's kind of two things to talk about here. One, notice that I said something. Depending on which interpretation you read, it'll either say pierce or dig at or tunnel through. The oldest version that we have comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls. You're familiar with that?
Yes. That's the one I was referring to with Isaiah being the oldest scroll. That's the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Correct? Well, right. But the oldest version that we have of Psalm 22 was also found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, if I remember correctly. And the trouble with that oldest version that we have is that the word that belongs there in Psalm 22 verse 16 is not a Hebrew word. If you go look at the text, you'll find a word that it's just misspelled, or they're using a version of a word that isn't used anywhere else. We just don't know what word is meant to be there. Now, there's essentially two interpretations of that word. That word could either be ka'ari, which essentially means like a lion, or it could mean karu, which means it's like a verb, like to dig. So this could either be dogs surround me, a pack of villains encircle me, they pierce or they dig my hands and my feet. Or it could be dogs surround me, a pack of villains encircles me, like a lion, they're at my hands and my feet. And we just don't know which. Like we just have no idea. The oldest text that we have doesn't say either of those. It's ambiguous. But I would kind of lean towards the lion one, because the rest of the psalm is like using animal imagery. Like there's dogs surrounding me, there's bulls, there's lions everywhere. There's, like it seems like kind of on theme. There's horns of the wild oxen, so it just checks out that they'd be using imagery to refer to lions again. But we just don't know what that verse refers to. But that verse, that they pierced my hands, my feet, is the one that you're citing as, yes, but how did they know about crucifixion, right? But it's ambiguous if they're actually referring to that at all.
Yeah, understood. And in the crucifixion being developed and perfected much later. Although I do see that there are a lot of similarities in regards to the events. The Romans were referred as dogs by the Jewish people during that time.
Well, yeah, but to be clear, that's like that's every
a common Middle Eastern thing.
That's just a common human thing. Like, ever since we've had dogs, we just refer to people that we don't like as dogs.
Yeah. Poor dogs, right?
Yeah, I know, right? What did they ever do to deserve that?
Yeah, they always take the brunt of our hatred for ourselves. But I believe there are other prophecies as well, and you do bring good points about the Isaiah and other arguments.
So, Luke, can I give you a recommendation? Just because, like, I'm slightly well read on the whole prophecy business, but I have a friend. His name is Justin. He went to seminary. He's a former born-again Christian, if I remember correctly. He's very well studied on this stuff, and you'd probably have a very interesting conversation with him about, the biblical prophecies, because one of the things that he thinks is he doesn't think any of them have been fulfilled. I'm just not well read enough to make that claim. So he actually does YouTube and TikTok lives as well, 3 times a week. So I would highly recommend you have a conversation with him. He's a cool dude.
What's his name?
His name is Justin. The account name is Deconstruction Zone.
I've debated that guy.
Okay, so then you know what he says about the prophecies then.
Yeah, bro. I love that guy, dude. I like every time I walk away with him, or I walk away more enriched in my life. I'm telling you.
Well, then you already know what I'm. So everything I know about the prophecies I learned from him. So it's probably not useful for us to talk about prophecies since you already talked to the master.
No, fair enough. But in regards to for you, like, what would you need to see, for example, that proves the existence of a God? I'm just curious. Like, is there do you have one thing in your heart, man, that like you say, okay, I give, fair enough.
So I mean, there's like the kind of a few different ways I can answer this, and like they're all honest, of course. But so surely, if Jesus appeared in my living room, and then started helping me pack up my boxes, and then said, hey, now that we're done packing, you want to party? And then turned on my sink, snapped his fingers, and wine came out, I'd probably be a Christian, right? If that happened, I'd be a Christian. Especially because Jesus would seem like a cool dude, right? So surely if that happened, I'd be a Christian. Now, that's not going to happen. I think you and I probably agree on that. But at least there's something that will convince me, right? Now, something more realistic, I mean, perhaps one could find archaeological evidence that, like, for example, if somebody found the blood of Jesus somewhere, like, preserved in some weird way, and it actually only had 24 chromosomes, that would be very, very compelling. Like, that shouldn't be possible. It should not be possible for a human to have 24 chromosomes and be an adult, right? And if they found that in Jerusalem, and then they also found, like, a cross, or like the remnants of a cross, that would be very compelling. So like that kind of like damning archaeological evidence could be very convincing as well. If somebody made a very compelling philosophical argument of the form, like, if A is true and B is true, then C is true. And if I just believed A and B and they showed that those two things imply C, then I'd have to be compelled to believe. So there's a few different ways that it could work. But whatever those ways might be, if God exists, then God surely knows what would convince me as well.
So, like, have you encountered like the fine-tuning of the universe argument? Like,
I have.
What are your thoughts on that? Or even like the what's it called? It's like there's a fine-tuning argument, and you know how there's 2 arguments. There's like Darwin's theory of crap. Dude, I'm blanking out. Help me out here. Darwin's theory of evolution, and then we have I forgot what the other one was. The one that kind of goes against that. The information.
Like creationism?
Information.
You mean intelligent design?
And there we go. Intelligent. Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, so as far as fine-tuning is concerned, I generally am not particularly sold on it. I think that fine-tuning is at best we should be agnostic confronting the fine-tuning data, because it seems like in order to assume that like the fundamental constants that of nature that we know about are actually fine-tuned, it seems like we have to assume that like we know everything about the fundamental constants of nature, which like obviously we don't, right? Obviously we're very, very new into this whole science thing. We've only been doing this for a few hundred years. And so like I'm pretty agnostic about the fine-tuning thing. With regards to intelligent design, I just don't think that there's good evidence supporting that. Like evolution has like if you look at the evolutionary hypothesis and you say, okay, on the evolutionary hypothesis, what would I expect? Well, you would expect to find transitions between species. You'd expect to find DNA evidence relating species. And like when you actually go and you do the science, you do the paleontology, you do the DNA analysis, you just find that all those predictions come true. On the other hand, on the intelligent design hypothesis, you would expect to see no useless things in animals. You would expect things to be designed, like if you have an intelligent designer that is intelligent, you would expect the design to be well designed. And then you can go and you find, oh, actually it isn't though. There are a lot of there are a lot of things that like point to an unintelligent designer or like a bad designer, right? Examples include the what is it called? It's a nerve in the neck. It is the recurrent laryngeal nerve. This is a nerve that starts in the brain, goes all the way down, wraps around the heart, and then comes back up to your voice box. Now, in a human, it's not so bad, because it doesn't have to go very far, just maybe 1.5 feet. But in a giraffe, the nerve starts in the brain, goes all the way down to its chest, 10 feet, down to its heart, wraps around the heart, and then it goes all the way back up to its voice box in its head. And like, that's really bad design. What kind of engineer would design that? That's like awful. Like if that nerve gets caught, it'll choke your heart. So it just seems like if life was actually intelligently designed, then maybe we should have had a better designer.
I see where you're coming from at that, and that's true. You're saying that the flaws within the system then would be rightfully attributed to the one who designed it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
And
right, like
I think that's the whole genesis. Like, it's the woman you gave me argument, right? Which is true. It's like you're the one who created this.
Yeah. I mean, like, and by the way, on the evolutionary hypothesis, the recurrent laryngeal nerve is totally well explained, because if it's the case that the recurrent laryngeal nerve evolved in fish, which it did, many fish have a recurrent laryngeal nerve, then the heart is actually below. It's like, 1 second, let me pull up a diagram. Actually, no, you wouldn't be able to see my screen anyway. Can you see anything that I'm doing with my hands? No, of course you can't.
Dude, I can't
okay,
see crap. I see a blue
that's
screen on
fine.
my phone.
That's fine. Just picture this. So you have the brain. You have the brain, and then below that you have the heart, and below that you have the larynx. This is the thing that controls like the throat muscles. And that's the order that it would be in for a fish, right? Because the fish's brain is in some sense like it's not like the mouth is near the brain. It's like the brain is further back and near to the heart. So this is all to say, in a fish, to have the recurrent laryngeal nerve pass between the brain and the heart makes sense, or pass like kind of around the heart makes sense, because that's like a straight line path connecting the brain to the larynx in a fish. But if the fish's neck then got longer through the process of evolution, and the larynx followed the head with the brain, then it will stay wrapped around the heart the whole time. And as the neck gets longer in the giraffe, the only thing that can happen is the nerve has to get longer because it's already wrapped around the heart. Yeah. So it is entirely expected that this weird design, quote unquote, exists in the natural world if you accept the evolutionary hypothesis. But if you accept the intelligent design hypothesis, it's very confusing as to why it's there at all.
Look, I really do you believe that we as like humans can design, like take charge and redesign humanity in the way we envision it. Like, for
Maybe,
example,
maybe not
there's
yet.
these evolutionary mistakes, and it's worthwhile as man kind of like correcting that, or got like the creator's
I would
mistake,
say,
whatever you want to throw in there.
I would say to a certain extent, yeah. Like, I think it's a super good thing when, I mean, there is actually a recent, this is like huge groundbreaking news, that there was a baby that I'm not sure if it was a baby or a fetus, but there was a very young human, I should say, that was cured with gene editing technology of an otherwise fatal genetic disorder, which is like amazing. Like, they altered their genes, so this genetic disorder was gone, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
But that is a design flaw, right? If it was actually designed.
No, absolutely. I see your argument. The only thing, okay, like I'm also a hopeful optimistic. Like, I hope that we humans use things for good purposes. In that
I hope so
instance,
too.
excellent. But I also know that humanity in itself proved that it is not capable of only doing those things which are considered good.
Oh yeah, no. This has the
yeah.
potential to be used for like horrible eugenic stuff too, and I'm really not on board with that.
Yeah, I know, and I would imagine like a majority of society, okay, Western society would say that, and other societies as well. But the thing that I'm getting at is that same belief that humanity knows more and there isn't like a creator that endows worth into an individual, like a source outside of ourselves for worth. A byproduct of that mentality is you get Mengele in concentration camps doing experiments on twins to make the, like in his head, that was great. And that's what scares me. And the reason is because he bought into that idea that he can design the ultimate person. And I personally don't think that humanity should head in that direction. I heard a wonderful podcast today. You know the Sean Ryan show?
No, I don't. Just to be clear.
Yeah.
At least so the Nazis were like famously Catholic. Like, that was their like Schmittler was Catholic. That was like they were Christian, right? As like a thing, they were Christian.
Yeah, quite frankly, they were not known
maybe they
for
were
that,
bad
especially
Christians. Maybe
for
they were
the-
bad
for
Christians,
the-
I agree with you. But like they had like the SS had God be with us etched onto their belts, right?
Oh, no, absolutely. I can see how that can, but to say like, okay, when you call someone a scientist, right? You're saying that there's someone who practices science, I would imagine. Am I correct? That goes through the peer review. They dedicate themselves to a discipline, to knowledge, to facts beyond their biases. Am I and then
Yeah,
they
sure.
have to
That, I mean,
meet
that's the
those
goal anyway.
qualifications. Yeah, I agree. Like, and though they have to hit those qualifications to be legitimately called a scientist.
Well, a
Like-
scientist is a profession, so like the qualification to being a scientist is to, as a profession, or as your core line of work, maybe you're independently wealthy, so you don't need to work for money, but as your core occupation is doing science, right?
Absolutely. And I also believe the same term is applied when you call someone a Christian, is someone who actively practices that, which is their trade. And I believe Christianity is just like science in a matter where it's something you do. It's something you put into. It's something that it takes work. It's not easy. It is the most difficult thing to try to do a lot of the things that
Well,
the
but
standard.
my point is just the only reason I brought that up was because you said that Mengele is a great example of like what happens if you don't believe in a god, and you think that we're just but like he did believe in a god, or at least from as far as we can tell, he did. He was like a strict Roman Catholic, and he may have been like an atrocious. I mean, he obviously was an atrocious human being, but like he wasn't an example of somebody who didn't believe in God, and that's how we ended up with him, right?
Yeah, I think that definitely for him, that's a case and a half. But I also do think there's places like China, Pol Pot, Cambodia, where all those societies, you know, even though the majority of the people would say they were a certain way or belief, the actions of that leadership just changed everything. And their core beliefs really is kind of what resonated when repeated enough. And I think that comes from the thinking that human beings have no value, which, granted, I give atheism the benefit of the thought of the core ideal of atheism allows people to be independent thinkers. I think
Well,
the
and
most dangerous
by
thing
by the way,
yeah,
atheism doesn't imply that you think that humans have no value. Like that's not a corollary of atheism.
yes, it's not.
In fact, actually, I would argue that Christianity requires that you value this life significantly less than atheists would value this life.
So, like, is this okay? I'm curious to hear that. Like,
Yeah,
please expound.
so
Yeah,
if you're a Christian, the most important thing for you is saving as many other people as you can and making sure that you yourself get to heaven, right? That's the most important thing, because the afterlife is forever. This life is temporary, right? This is a test. This is a time to show your faith. But that's the only thing that matters about this life. If you're an atheist, this life is all you get. And so, of course, you're going to care about it way more than somebody who thinks that you have an eternity of glory afterwards.
Understood. I know, absolutely. And in your argument, you're saying that as an atheist, there's still that core belief in the good.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, there are bad atheists just as much as there are bad Christians, right? But the point is that, like, if you're an atheist, like, if you take two equally good people, and one who's a Christian and one who's an atheist, the atheist is more likely to value this life more than the Christian will, because the Christian has another life to care about as well.
Okay. No, I absolutely see your point of view. Although with your points being what is the most important thing for a Christian, I can tell as a Christian that is not it. You know, those are not the most important things.
You wouldn't say saving as many people as like first get it, you got to put on your own mask before you assist others with theirs, but you wouldn't say that ensuring that you get to heaven is the most important thing?
May I be honest? In the scriptures, that is what you're referring to is the Great Commission, which is go out and spread the gospel and make disciples, right? So, but that's different than saving people. So
that's what I mean. That's what I mean by saving people.
Yes, exactly. But that's not in the capacity of a human being to do. I cannot change a heart.
So then when I say save, I mean allow people to be saved.
Allow people to be saved.
Yeah, you want to spread the gospel so that they can be saved, right?
I can tell you that the priorities are creating an intimate relationship with a God, and out of that intimate relationship you have with that God, and you get to know him, then you are able that intimate relationship you share with that God will then, how do I say, almost like a household, like you have your mom and your dad. When you go out into the world, that relationship is going to reflect into the world. And as people come across your life, because you always talk about the person you have a relationship with, right? You share that relationship you have with other people. Hi, this is my wife. It's the same thing. And I think you're coming from a point of like, yes, there are Christians out there that specifically chase souls. Although I don't believe that's my job. I think that's God's job. I'm just the one that's supposed to have a relationship with him and behave the way he does to the best of my capacity. And that's it. I think those are the priorities of a Christian. And I think there's other Christians here that might hate me for saying it, but it's not that I don't love people who the faith says they're not saved, because I've seen non-saved people behave way moral than Christians. So
hey, me too, man.
Yeah. And I'm a Christian talking. So I'm just being real, like.
I appreciate that. Hey,
yeah.
Luke, you've been a delight, but I should move on to other guests before I have to end the live. Is that fair?
Yo, good talking to you, bro. Keep doing your show, man. You're awesome.
I appreciate you. Thanks for being here, bud. Take care.
Okay, bro. Bye.
I could talk to Luke forever. He was a really, really kind fella. But I do have to move on eventually. All right, we have some super chats to read, and then we'll get on with the rest of it. Colin Stalker, no, I already read that one. Toussaint, no, I already read that one. Robert Konitzer with the $2, thank you. And Nectu, $2 for my tip jar. I appreciate that. At this point, well, you could still call me a scientist, as that is what I'm spending most of my time, or I will be spending most of my time doing, just unpaid. But I am also a busker now, a professional busker, if you will. So the tip jar is somewhere, I don't know where, but it's nearby, wherever it might be. At least until, you know, I'm still applying for jobs, clearly, but anyway, let's bring up Casey from the D. A busker is somebody who performs for money. That's what a busker is. Casey, how's it going?
Not today. You asked me at the thing yesterday.
Casey, are you there?
No, I don't carry my purse to work.
Casey.
I carry my bag. Oh. But I always have 20s in the bank.
Casey.
So kids know. It's always the top.
Fluffy, I am moving to the US in 4 or 5 days. That's when my flight leaves. Casey, are you there?
And when they decide, whatever they decide.
Yes, usually buskers are musicians, but why can't buskers be you know, science communicators who also do blood sport debates, sort of. Casey, are you there?
It's the medical argument.
All right, it looks like Casey's not there. Bummer, because he said they did an interesting argument. Let's bring up another person. Yeah, no, I'm going to. I will have to get a new PC. I might get a new camera as well. We'll see. Yep, back to AZ. At least for now. Stop spending your hurt. Get over it. I'm not hurt. I'm good. Oh, that's a good. Yeah, I guess I am bringing this camera back, so I won't necessarily need a new one. All right, let's bring up SCG. Europe has started a fund to attract more academics from Trump. Look, the reason why I'm going back to the US is for personal reasons. So Europe is not an option for me, at least not at the moment. SCG, how's it going?
Doing great, thanks. How are you, man?
I'm doing okay. Stressed out about moving, but you know how it goes. So, what God do you believe in?
I mean, I'm an Eastern Orthodox Christian, so I guess you've heard of that. So, yeah, the Trinitarian Christian God.
Yeah,
May I just ask you one little simple thing before we move on to the topic?
Sure, go ahead.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you familiar with the Arduinos?
I am familiar with Arduinos, yeah.
Okay, so I recently started doing all that, and you know, I have all these sensors, and yeah, I broke my microphone because it was messed up. So I'm doing like the IR sensor. And it only gives me the value, you know, when I'm reading the value. It's either like 1020 or 32. There's nothing in between. Is it just that the sensor is shit and I need to get a new one, or
I have no idea. You're not giving me any details, but that's probably not why you came up to talk. So your audio sounds fine. Yeah. What God, or why do you... Okay, I already know what God you believe in. Mm-hmm. Question is, what do you think is the most compelling reason you could give me to believe that you are correct about the God that you believe in?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So, you know, I would have to like get your perspective first. Like, what's the main reason if you ever practiced religion? Why did you stop practicing it? So I heard that you're Jewish. Like, what's the thing that convinced you that Judaism not
to be clear, like I still sometimes practice Judaism, but like I've never really believed it. I just do it for cultural reasons.
Yeah.
So like I've never really believed it, at least not as far back as I can remember. So I don't know if that helps answer your question.
You have never been convinced of it. You have never found anything convincing that made you, you know, think, yeah, this is actually like what
at least as far back as I can remember. Perhaps there were times when I was like 4 years old when I did believe, but it's hard to say.
So, I would like to address a couple of arguments.
Yeah,
for
sure.
example, I wouldn't like go one-to-one with how they're presented. So, like, you have the Kalam argument that I do not 100% agree with all the premises of it, but I would say, like, object A causes object B, causes object C, causes object D, etc. And, one of my points that I would like to address, like, any object in existence, it would have, like, you're a astrophysics major, right?
No. I have a PhD in physics.
Oh, okay, sorry. So, my bad.
You're fine.
Yeah, don't take it personal. So, yeah, probably, and all the viewers are familiar with the concept of kinetic energy and potential energy, right? So, I would say not only necessary energy, but I would say that there's some kind of complexity in any like object, anything really. So there's like the actual complexity and the potential complexity.
Wait, hold on. Are you a Thomist?
No, quite the opposite.
Okay, good, because are you an Aristotelian?
I mean, I'm not really familiar that much with Aristotelian.
It's the whole potential. It's like potential and actual and all of this business. I think that's Aristotle.
From them, but like I formulate it differently, like my way, and if it's wrong,
go ahead.
I'll admit it's wrong. So I haven't heard them say this though. So like, if object A causes object B, and it's usually not. It's usually objects A, C, D, E causing object B into, like, I don't know, existence or moving or anything. But for the purpose of simplifying the argument, there's object A that causes object B.
Sure.
So the both actual and potential complexity of the object A would have to be greater than the complexity of object B, both actual and potential.
Why?
Let's say this. It's just kind of my observation. Let's say you're an engineer and you build a machine. Machine, some kind of electric generator that's like 82% effective.
Sure.
It was your brain, it was your work, it was your everything, and all the materials used. But if you made it 82% effective, you could probably make it 82.05% effective with more effort, and then you could make it 82.053% effective. So you basically have the potential to make it better.
Okay, sure.
So yeah, if we followed the line of causality, and then there's the other thing, the other argument that you would either end up in infinite regress or some kind of uncaused cause, right?
Wait a minute. So first, it seems like in a lot of cases we do make things that are less complex than us, but also it seems like sometimes we make things that are more complex than us. In fact, it's super reasonable to think that in 10 years we will have created artificial intelligence, large language models that are more complex than the human brain. So it doesn't seem like it's the case that all that the complexity of the creator is always greater than the complexity of the creation. That doesn't seem like it's always the case.
Well, both the potential and the actual one.
I don't know what you mean by potential complexity, though.
Potential complexity would be like the seed having the potential to be a tree.
Do you just mean a way that a thing could be?
I mean, I don't have a potential to be a tree, but like a seed does.
So when you say the potential complexity, you just mean that the complexity of the ways the thing could have been?
Yeah, they could be, right.
But I think it's possible that in 10 years or 15 years, humans, there is no way that a human could be more complex than some AI.
Why do you think so?
Well, I mean, if we make an AI that has more neurons connecting it, more neurons, connecting its whatevers, and, if we get to the point where it is able to innovate faster than we are, well, then it will be more complex than us. It'll have a more complex brain.
Maybe in some aspects, but not all of them. Not the sum of all complexity would not be greater than ours.
I mean, imagine a world where we create a machine that is complex enough to create a better machine, which is itself complex enough to make an even better machine, and so on and so forth, until eventually the machine that we created ended up making a machine that is more complex than any human that's ever existed. Well, that doesn't seem impossible.
But it wouldn't really be a creation of a single human, right? It would be
okay, so I could imagine that, like, there is a way to make a I could imagine that there's a way that it's I could imagine that it's plausible that humans could make an artificial intelligence that is more complex than the sum total of every human that has ever existed.
I really doubt that. I doubt that.
Like, it doesn't seem impossible, right? Maybe it's not plausible, but it doesn't seem impossible. But I mean,
no, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
So, but I mean, even if we grant that, which I'm not sure if we should grant that, the complexity of a thing is always more complex than the thing it makes. Even if that's true, that would just mean that God has to be more complex than us. But I'm pretty sure that Eastern Orthodox requires divine simplicity, right?
Yeah, not really. Like the Thomist perception of absolute divine simplicity is not really compatible with Eastern Orthodoxy, because we have the sorry, we have the essence energies distinction. God's essence is different from his energies, and then his essence being so complex that our mind cannot comprehend it, and that we cannot see it. In the Bible it says, God told Moses and many others, you can't see my face, no one can see my face and live. It's
yeah,
we
sure.
cannot,
and I actually think that divine simplicity is kind of dumb, so I'm glad that you don't agree with that. But if that's the case, then it just suggests that God is a complex thing. And if your claim is that, well, we are complex, so obviously we need a creator, then it seems like you would have to say that God is complex, even more complex, and so God is even more in need of a creator, right?
No, not necessarily. That's not the point of my argument. That's not where I was leading to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, where are we going?
Basically, so if there was, let's say, the uncaused cause would have to be, like, I'm not yet naming it. I'm not saying what the uncaused cause would be, but if we look at it, and let's say we grant my complexity thing, it would have been like a prior cause before our existence, and we have minds, so our minds would have to be preceded by something that is more complicated than a mind and consciousness, or some kind of super mind or super consciousness.
Well, I don't know if that's true, by the way. Consider this. We as humans, we cannot fly, right? We don't have the ability to fly, but we can make things that are less complex than us, but that can fly. So it doesn't seem necessary that just because we have minds, therefore we must have been created by a more complex mind.
Well, okay, but not necessarily mind, but something even more how to say it, more complex than a mind.
Well, that doesn't seem to follow, though. Just because we have a mind doesn't mean that we must have been created by something more complex than a mind. Like, you can create something that's less complex. You can, like, surely you can create something that's less complex than you, but something that you don't have anything in common with.
Yeah, sure.
So unless you mean something more complex than a mind, but not at all mind-like, then I don't know why we would assume that it has that property.
Yeah, but if you take a look at it, if we had, even if it doesn't have anything with mind, you know, if you had this super complex thing that you know is able to create a mind, you know, it does sound a lot like God to me. Maybe it's not.
Or
like
it
the
could
best
just be a
argument. I
natural
haven't
event,
phrased it
right?
yet.
It could just be
Sorry?
a natural event then.
Yeah,
And-
yeah, sure.
But then, but now your view seems to be compatible with atheism.
Well, maybe, but you know, how to? Okay, I'll try to phrase it. You know, we cannot fly, but you know, we can take some principles. You know, our arms could behave like wings, even if you know, if we just
What?
used some modification,
What?
something
Our
to dress
arms
them.
could behave like wings? Are you sure?
I mean, you know, like those squirrels that jump up and, you know, like dive into air, like stuff, you know, if you just added a blanket.
Right, but they
that's
can't
gonna
fly
be-
either. They can glide.
Yeah, glide, sorry. Yeah, and
But our
imagine if we
our
just
arms
added
can't
some
glide.
turbulence into it.
We can't glide.
If we added some blankets to us, you know.
Yeah, and if
glued it
my
to
grandma
our
was a
arms.
bicycle, wait, if my grandma had wheels, she'd be a bicycle. Is that what the saying is?
We have a different thing. I won't say it here on live.
Okay. If my
But
grandma was a
yeah,
bicycle, she'd
this-
have wheels. What? Yeah, go ahead.
Here we say, you know, if my grandma had the thing, she would be a grandpa.
Ah, okay, yeah. See, there you go. Mine is a little bit. I mean, I think mine is lewd because the implication is that everybody, or is that she gets ridden or something. Anyway, but that's neither here nor there. So, but my
yeah,
point is that like we don't fly, and the things that we build that do fly have nothing to do with the way that humans are.
I mean, when you take a look at the how do you say it? The planes, it's usually mostly just like air pressure regulation, you know, just making sure that air pressure below you is bigger than the air pressure above you, right?
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, like that's not a. Let's just say yes. It's close enough. Yeah.
I mean, oversimplified, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know. I'm doing electrical engineering, you know, degree, so I know something here and there. But yeah, I mean that's like the first thing that comes to my mind, like the first cause argument, you know, and maybe
Yeah,
the complexity
but we didn't
does
get
not
there, right?
necessarily have to be a super mind, but like there's I would say a huge probability that it does.
But how
It
did we
is.
even get to so what we got to, if we granted the idea that complexity, that a thing that creates something else, the creation must always be less complex than the creator.
Mhm.
If we grant that, all we figure out is that something more complex gave rise to us. But that doesn't mean that A, there's even a beginning, nor does it mean that that the thing that caused us isn't natural. So it seems like we don't get anywhere. We don't get anywhere closer to a divine being from this.
I mean, look, if you go to, okay, let's play with infinities. Option A, let's say that, you know, there's no beginning. There's infinite regress in time. You know, you can go
Yep.
infinitely
You can go back
into
forever.
history. Yeah, under this proposition, you would essentially somewhere in infinity, like with mathematical limits, you would in infinity reach the infinitely complex object, right?
Not necessarily. You could just get to, I mean, there is no end, so you would just get more and more complex forever, but you'd never get anything that's infinitely complex.
I mean, sure, it can converge to a single. Yeah, now that I think of it, it can converge to a constant, but
Or it could diverge, but no single entity would be infinitely complex, right?
But like mathematically speaking, hypothetically speaking, within infinity.
But infinity
you could-
infinity doesn't exist. It's not a number, right? You would never actually get there.
Yeah, it's a more of a concept, but yeah. So I wouldn't say infinite time exists. Like how do you even get the everything going through time if it's infinite?
I don't
get
know
what
what you
I'm
mean by
saying?
that. What do you mean everything going? How do you
Time
get
had
everything
no
going?
beginning.
Yeah. So suppose that it didn't have a beginning. What's the issue?
I mean, like it's against pretty much against Big Bang theory. We know what happened 1 second after Big Bang and all this stuff. We don't know, and we generally see the pre-Big Bang existence as like singularity, right? So in singularity,
not really. So the singularity, the idea of like a genuine singularity has been kind of out of vogue for like 40 years or so. The idea is that the universe was very, very small, and then we don't know what it was like before. But to think that it was a singularity is probably to make a mistake in reasoning.
Yeah, but within that really small compact thing, without matter and all that stuff, like there's nothing really.
Well, no, there would have been
happening
matter
there.
there.
Just potential energy.
No,
There's
no,
just
there would have
potential
been matter. There definitely would have been matter, or at least like
Not formed,
energetic quantum fields.
Didn't they like come up like a bit after Higgs bosons or something?
Well, Higgs bosons are
Sorry.
an example of energetic quantum fields, right?
Mhm.
But anyway, suffice it to say, the idea of like a genuine singularity is a bit out of fashion, if you will, and the idea of like there being nothing, that's never really been in fashion. Most people would just
Well, I'm not saying nothing. I'm saying like time requires a reference point for it to start, as we know it. Like
yeah, sure.
when you
But
have
so suffice it to say,
if there's nothing really happening, like there's really no time. Like if you have nothing
well, but
happening,
why would nothing be
infinitely-
happening? Why would nothing be happening?
Well, because all the energy would be compacted into potential energy.
Why can't you just
eventually.
have an infinite chain of Big Bangs? You have a Big Bang, and then another Big Bang, and then another Big Bang, and so on and so forth.
I mean, that's another point. Then you would have like that would mean that like time is cyclic, right?
Yeah, or not, or maybe it's branching. I mean, but the point is it just doesn't seem clear that like time had a beginning.
I mean, if you had nowhere to start, you wouldn't even get to a point,
Why not?
Like if imagine yourself running on a field, and people asking you where did you start your run from, and you say infinitely far away.
No, that's a mistake. You would say I didn't start. I've always been running.
But don't you see, like that's a change of. There's no change of change of state in.
You can have if I've always been running, then like 2 minutes ago I was further away. I just happened to pass by you now.
Well, yeah, but how can you run without starting to run?
I could ask the same thing of the God that you believe in, can't I?
I mean, yeah, like you can ask.
How could God exist if it's always existed? I mean, like, look, it just seems like it just seems like from a physical point of view, like if we just run the physics models, they make sense. Like you can totally well describe a cyclic model of the universe. There's no issue with like the actual physical description of it in terms of the equations. So like maybe it's not intuitive, but that's a human brain problem. That's not like a universe problem.
But sorry, how can you have a cyclic model of the universe, like given the second law, entropy always rising, S of where time is equal I plus 1 is always greater than or equal to S, where
Yeah,
T
so
is
that's a good
equal Y.
question. There are several I could like name drop a few different papers right now that are that discuss cyclic models of the universe. It's actually something that I'm working on personally. It's a project that I'm working on. You know I'm a physicist, right? Like that's my day job. So that's something that I'm actually working on myself. I have an idea as to how to build a model, and I want to see how it plays out. But this is something that's been talked about for a while. There was a paper that came out by, let me pull up the name. Oh, it's not in this document. It's in a different document. One sec. Naya Yesh something, but oh shoot. It's okay. I can't pull it up right now. I'd have to open up Chrome, and that would make my computer crash. Anyway, if you wanted to DM me afterwards, I could send you the name of the paper. But because I can never remember his name, and it's not in this document. And for some reason, this document won't let me read the rest of my. Oh, it's because I'm signed into the wrong Google account. One sec. Let me try signing into a different Google account.
I mean, no need if it's not really relevant to the debate. No need to pull it up.
I mean, it's not, but I should do this anyway. Otherwise, I will be sad forever. Which, by the way, will extend both to the past and to the future infinitely. Me being sad forever, that is. Two-step verification. Okay, fine. Yes, it's me. Okay.
Yeah, so
anyway,
can I just ask you?
So this is just to say that it's at least plausible. It's at least like taken seriously in the physics community.
I mean, I don't know. It would either have to like involve like negative entropy or entropy like converging to zero but never meeting it infinitely.
Yeah. So the way that I conceptualize this, and this is the basis of the model that I'm thinking about, that I'm probably going to write a paper about if it works out, is roughly that in any universe that has essentially a time reversal, so you have a flow of time, and then as a result of the topology of the universe, the time reversal, it goes in the backwards direction. I suspect that you can just create a model where the entropy itself reverses, and so that's one possible explanation. Now, if that might not...
sorry to
can
I
go
just
ahead.
Interrupt you? Entropy inverses, but like, can you have negative entropy, or like it converging to zero in infinity?
No, the
entropy
would revert. The entropy would reverse in this case.
What do you mean by reverse? Like
it would go in the opposite
back to
direction.
higher-
It would go in the opposite. It would start to decrease.
Okay, it would start to decrease, but like it can only decrease so much.
Yeah,
as
it
I'm
would decrease,
familiar,
and then it
right?
would end up back where it started, and then it would increase again, and then it would decrease, and then and so on and so forth.
Oh, but doesn't make sense. Like if you reverse the reversed version, that would mean like that you would have like a timeline where you know, as time passes, entropy gets smaller.
Yeah.
With that model.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
At least. So I've seen a toy model. The reason why I'm playing with this idea is because I've seen a toy model of this work in another context where you can just explicitly show the entropy does reverse, whereas the entropy of the rest of the universe goes forward. In a small patch, you can see the entropy increases, then decreases, then increases, then decreases, without any change in energy of the system. So this is at least something that is that has some basis, but of course it's something I'm working on.
Within a totally isolated system.
Yes, in this case, it's totally isolated. Yeah.
Okay, I'll DM you. So if you
yeah, I can send you the reference
able...
if I can find that paper again. I think I actually made a video about it a while ago on YouTube. I think I did a. I can pull it up, and I can just on the paper that I'm talking about. I think I did a peer review. But again, neither here nor there. Anything else that you want to talk about? Because otherwise, I should end the live soon.
Yeah, sure. I want to talk about a little bit of some other topics.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
If you're like, I mean,
sure.
I'd like to discuss generally like the biblical commentary, like the biblical interpretation and stuff. If you have any questions that you want to ask first, like any gotcha questions or anything like
about the Bible,
you can.
Do you take the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, seriously? As far as like everything in it within it is true?
I would say that generally the Orthodox Church takes it seriously, but not necessarily everything literally. You know.
Okay. So what does that mean exactly? Does that mean that like you take the Genesis account as like a true? Oops, a Genesis account as like true?
To some extent, you know, like I'm sure that you know that we don't go by sola scriptura, right?
Yep.
So we generally like to read the fatherly commentaries, like of the Church Fathers. So there's a great commentary by I think Saint Basil the Great. He lived in the 4th century. It's called the Hexameron. You know, the 6 days, and you know, in it he hypothesizes where that, you know, the universe being created in 6 days is more of a metaphor and more of a simplifying of the language for the humans, so that we could understand it, and that it's generally referring to 6 time periods that might or might not be equal. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
But do you take the order of creation to be true?
I don't know. It could have been simplified. It could have just been, you know, differently categorized, so to speak. You know, that you take other things, you know, differently, you know, in different categories.
So the reason I ask is because like one of the descriptions is that it says that plants were made on day 3, if I remember correctly, plants like land plants, and that the sun was created on day 4, and that seems not true, right?
Yeah,
that plants were created after, or that plants were created before the sun. That seems very, very bizarre.
Yeah, I get your point. You know, that's something that I will need to check on, but like, it could have just referred, like, you know, that there was some kind of maybe a smaller change to the sun. I don't know where its radiation or something reached, or you know, generally the forming of Earth that impacted the sun's impact on Earth. If you understand me. Sorry, English is not my native.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Can you repeat that?
The part about plants being created before the sun could refer to the, like, you know, the plants existing on Earth, you know, and sun is still existing, but like it's not still a finished product. You know, it could refer to, like,
I don't know what you mean by that.
You know, like as if the sun still being formed, or our perception of the sun still being formed on Earth. You know, like.
But like, so plants came about, if I remember correctly, plants came about like 500 million years ago, I want to say. And the sun came about 4.5 billion years ago. So it just seems like the sun was definitely done forming.
Yeah, but was well, maybe done, maybe not. The final touch was done, you know, like.
What do you mean by the final touch?
Like, was the sun's radiation on the Earth's surface like the same 500 million years ago and today?
Well, I mean, roughly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it could refer to. You know, maybe, you know, that some kind of small change was important for the biblical authors. You know,
it just seems like they thought that. So it also seems weird that they thought that light came before the sun, right? That's also kind of strange, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, but like, there are many stars all older than the sun in our universe.
Well, surely, yeah, but do you think that they knew that when they were writing it?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think so. You know, they wrote what they wrote, you know, and we believe that they were inspired by God to write all that. Were they able to comprehend the depth of everything that they wrote? I don't know.
Yeah, so all I'm saying is that it seems like there's a lot going on that's like at least read in a kind of normal English way, or a normal, you know, maybe not English, but in just a normal way. It seems like Genesis 1 just gets a lot of facts wrong about the universe. Like even if you interpret it generously, it just seems to get a lot of facts wrong. Like it says that like birds were created before land animals. That's not true. It says that the beasts of the earth and humans were created at the same time on the same day, and that's not true. It says that the sky is made of water, and that's not true. Like it just gets a lot of facts wrong.
Well, yeah, but we don't really look at the Bible as the science book, like, oh yeah, I need to solve this biology problem.
So that's why I was asking that's why I was asking, in what sense do you take it seriously?
I would say that the primary, basically the primary use of the Bible would be like to get morals from the stories in the Bible, to get wisdom from it, you know, and apply it.
Yeah, okay. Then I mean, if that's your view of the Bible, then I don't really have any contentions with it. I just don't think that the events as described in the Bible are like real things.
I mean, I would like to say that they might be a hyperbole, you know, like the way we round things up, like when we say pi is equal to 3.14 and it's 3.14159 and then like infinitely many digits, and the Bible saying, you know, some king made like something that was round, and you know the pi there turns out to be like 3. It's not a perfect circle, I would say. It's not something that was nearly perfect to be made. You know, it's just rounded up and simplified.
Yeah, so there is one other contention that I have, namely that you surely you think that the Bible has things that are like not moral in it, right?
I mean, yeah, they're more like descriptive things rather than prescriptive.
Well, I mean, like, and I hate to do this because I have to go soon, but like, in Leviticus, it tells you that you can own slaves.
Yeah, I know.
And that's like not good. That's like God saying, "Hey, you're allowed to own slaves. Here's how to do it." And like that's prescriptive, not descriptive, right?
Yeah, and I've got my argument for it. You know, like we generally agree that the Bible was like a progressive revelation. You know, more and more things are like revealed in the Bible. It gets more like complex theologically as you go on, like from Genesis to Revelation.
But wouldn't that then be explained by having a more progressive people rather than, because like, look, if God was like trying to communicate with us and trying to tell us about this perfect morality, why wouldn't he just start with the perfect morality from the beginning? It just seems kind of strange.
I don't know, honestly. I don't know, and
that's
I
a
think
fair
okay
answer.
I don't know.
SCG, it is my bedtime. It sound from the way your voice sounds, it sounds like it's 11 o'clock for you two. So
yeah.
I'm gonna guess like, actually, if I guess the wrong country, considering that you're Slavic, I have a feeling I'll offend you. Do you want to tell me where you're from?
Well, I'm Serbia and Montenegro.
Okay, my guess was going to be somewhere in the former Yugoslav region, but I wasn't going to make a correct guess. So, but thank you for being here, bud. And it was lovely having you on, but I do have to end the live. Thanks for being here.
Same as well. Have a great night.
All right, y'all. I am going to end the live here. It's 11 o'clock, which is my usual ending time. So I will be live tomorrow for peer review, probably. It depends on how I feel. I might not do a peer review. I might just do debates because, you know, I won't get a whole lot more debates at this time slot. So we'll see. But I will see you guys then. Whether or not I'm doing a debate or a peer review, that is purely up to me and purely up to you guys in the Discord. So take care. And is Danny still live? Danny is not live. All right, everybody, whether you're watching on YouTube or on TikTok, let's go raid Ian. Just shout Blitz raid in the comments, whether you're on TikTok, on YouTube. Go find allegedly Ian somewhere. Actually, the account name is Bad Faith Barry. On YouTube, it's allegedly Ian. On TikTok, it's Bad Faith Barry. I'll see y'all there.